Hey, everybody that's probably going to be watching this later. Well, all of a sudden I see two people. Um, I don't know if that's regulars again or just people that are kind of passing through. I think I figured out what was going on with the quality of my videos and why my intro was stuttering this time. I guess sometime after we recovered from the power outage, the Wi-Fi got turned back on my desktop computer, and I don't need the Wi-Fi on there. It's, plugged in with an Ethernet cable. So I turned the Wi-Fi off, and it seemed like the intro ran a lot smoother after that. So I'm hoping that that issue is resolved. Um, well, as I pretty much indicated last night, I said unless I was feeling really bad or just really wiped out, which I was kind of wiped out a little bit earlier, but now I'm feeling a little better. So I said that I would probably go ahead, barring anything severe happening. Hey, Blissful, um, to do the second part of For the Love of John Cusack. Because I really wanted to cover all the movies, even the ones I haven't seen, for the benefit of everybody, including myself, because there were several of these that I hadn't seen, some of which I talked about last night. Hey, Kelly. And some of which I'm going to talk about tonight that I have not seen. So I'm happy to see that two of my regular ladies are in here and are chatting. So you guys will at least keep me company tonight. It looks like we got four in here, but like I say, I think, well, five now. Um, it- like I always say, and it doesn't make me upset at all because, sometimes I look around and see who's live, who's doing streams, and see if anything sounds interesting. And, I can't begrudge anybody that pops in here and finds it uninteresting and just goes on to the next thing. So, again, I want to remind everybody that this Saturday, the watch along will be for Leprechaun in honor of St. Patrick's Day, which will be the Friday before. And then the following Saturday, which is 25th of March, I will be doing After Midnight, which is an anthology type of horror film. So, if anybody is interested in joining me live on either one of those watch alongs or any other streams I do, even if I don't put the link as an invite in the chat, if somebody comes in here or is already in here and wants to join at any time, but barring, the last few seconds that I'm on here, then I would be glad to have anybody and everybody on. And I promise you, Kelly, that I am going to do the Hitchcock stream at some point in the very, very near future. So I'm hoping that you will join me for that one. And we can talk about all things Hitchcock related. Uh, let's see. And of course, tomorrow night we have the first part of the third season of Tales from the Dark Side with me and TJ, barring anything happening. So we're still planning on that. That will start at 8 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. The watch along for Saturday for Leprechaun should be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, unless Steve tells me that he's doing some kind of a watch along, in which case it'll be a little bit later. I am planning on going in a couple of weeks, or well, not a couple of weeks, actually, in a week. Planning on going to the Lexington Comic Con. Sam Raimi's supposed to be there, and he's one of my big, big heroes. Um, you know, I'm not called the Evil Dead chick for nothing. I mean, uh, a lot of his stuff has, been uneven in later years, but I will always and forever be a fan of the original Evil Dead trilogy, Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. I also have a poster coming to me from eBay. It's not an original one sheet, but it's a theater size reproduction of the original artwork that's got the woman where she looks like she's being pulled down into the ground. Um, and I always thought that was cool artwork. Doesn't have Bruce Campbell on it or anything, but it is still really cool artwork. And um, I will definitely be getting that poster framed after it is signed by Sam Raimi. Oh, goodness. Goodness sakes. Excuse me. Oh, let's see here. Oh no, Blissful, you're snowed in. So you got that big was it 25 inches? Did y'all get that much? Like over 2 feet of snow? Phew, yeah. Hey Rob. Yeah, definitely keep warm, Blissful. I'm with Kelly on that. You said Blissful, you said the worst of it's over. Well, that's good. Yeah, I will be sure to let you know, Kelly, as soon as like I said, it'll be in the very near future. Hey, Texas. Liz, will you say you got your Lucky Charms cereal bars for the Leprechaun watch along? That's awesome. Um, yeah, if you're talking about the poster and getting it signed by Sam Raimi, yes, I do. Keeping my fingers crossed. You probably shouldn't pray for stuff like this, but I'm praying to the good Lord that he doesn't cancel. Um, you say you ended up getting 12 inches. Well, that's enough right there. Hey, Rooster, welcome back. So, just with me blabbing a little bit, we've got 7 people in here now, so that's cool. And I am going to get started here in a little bit, but you know how I like to share my work woes with you guys because you all have sympathetic ears for that kind of stuff. But I'm sure a lot of you guys that have worked with, in customer service or, worked with the public in some way, um, you have no doubt dealt with this. Um, so there's this girl at one of the clinics, one of the Smile Doctors clinics, that has been repeatedly getting locked out of her computer. Okay. So I've been working with her for several weeks, and she tells me all the time how frustrated she is that this keeps happening to her. And so I'm aggressively trying to figure out what is causing her to get locked out. So I talked to my supervisor about it recently, and I said, "Look, I made sure that she wasn't signed in on the Wi-Fi on her phone. I made sure she wasn't signed into any Office apps on her phone." And so what he told me to do was monitor it and tell her that I am her main point of contact when she gets locked out, and to not let her reset her password. I'll just go in there on our end and unlock her. But she needs to tell me as soon as she gets locked out. And so I told her all these things. And I told her to call me on my cell. I don't like giving people my cell number, but this is pretty much the only way we could do it because I don't have a direct number that's work related. And so she said, "Well, how am I going to contact you if I can't even get into my computer?" I said, "Well," I said, "here's my cell number." I said, "Give me a call as soon as you get locked out." So what my supervisor also told me was, he said, "Make sure that she forgets the connection to any Smile Doctor's Wi-Fi connections at the clinic, because he said, especially if she has an iPhone, even though she isn't actively connected, the iPhone's going to see that previous connection. It's going to say, oh, I know that I need to connect to it. So he told me to have her forget the connection. And he said it's got to be something on her person, either the cell phone or a smartwatch or something like that. Okay. So I'm trying to do what he asked me to do. So she called me today and told me that she got locked out. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to unlock you on our end, but here's what I need you to do. And that started her wanting to argue with me over it. Instead of just doing what we ask, and it's simple things, it's not rocket science, guys. It's really simple, easy things to do. But they just refuse to believe that that could be the issue. First, she told me, she said, well, everybody at the clinic has smartwatches. Why is this only happening to me? And I want to say, well, it's not only happening to you. You told me the other day that another girl at the clinic was having this problem. And a few months before that, I found out another girl was having an issue. Okay. And she said, well, this guy Dan helped Bailey out with it. But she didn't know what he did. He may have done the same things I'm doing with her. I mean, so I finally got tired of her arguing with me. And I said, Carrie, I said, this is what the supervisors told me to do. And I know it's frustrating and I know it's aggravating and I know uh you don't like getting locked out a lot of times. Okay. Uh, and and I said, but I am trying to help you, but we need to go through these steps. But if you have any concerns about this, then I can turn you over to my supervisor and you can talk to him. Well, usually that works that they don't want to talk to your supervisor. Every IT manager I've had or IT supervisor I've had, nobody ever wants to talk to them. When I was at the library and Greg was my manager, all I would have to say is, "Do you want to talk to Greg?" "Oh, no, no, no. I don't want to talk to Greg." Because Greg would not sugarcoat things. He would just tell you how it is. And he'd basically, not try to, like I said, not try to sugarcoat it. He would just tell you, you know, don't argue with the people that are trying to help you in computer services. Um, they've been instructed certain things to do. If you have problems, then you need to come to me, and they never want to do that. So my supervisor now is not exactly like Greg, but he can get pretty wound up, and I don't think that people want to be on the receiving end of when he gets wound up. So that calmed her down a little bit. And I said, let's just try this and let me monitor it today. And guess what, guys? She didn't get locked out all day. I monitored it all day long in between doing other things. And she got locked out that one time. But when I had her forget the connection and I monitored it the rest of the day, I didn't hear a peep from her. And also, what I was watching did not show that she had gotten locked out since about 7:30 this morning. Okay. So, I don't know what tomorrow's gonna bring. I mean, she didn't get locked out Monday either. Uh, and so I don't know if she had forgotten the connection like I told her to do, and just didn't do it today, and that's why she got locked out. I figure the next thing's gonna be she's gonna say, "Well, I got to have the Wi-Fi on my phone at some point because yada yada yada. I got to do this and I got to do that." And I might just say, "Well, talk to my supervisor," because people want they they want you to twitch your nose and be able to fix something, but they don't want to when it really gets down to brass tacks, they never want to do what you tell them to do. It's like they know better, and I want to say, well, then why in the hell do you keep getting locked out then if you know better than I do? So anyway, there's my little rant about work, and then I promise here in a second I'm going to get to the movies. Um, Rooster, you say sounds like she's the problem. Rob, you say I don't miss doing tech support at all. Well, I think sometimes I think I'm a little bit too old to be switching careers at this stage. And I would still like to be in computers. And Steve would kill me, and he'll probably will kill me if he hears me say this. But I would really, like to stay in computers, but I want to be off help desk. I like helping people, but some people just get me so agitated. Um, I don't generally get stressed anymore. I just get mad because, you're trying to help somebody and they just will not listen. And I know any of you that have worked with the public, you've worked in customer service, or as Rob said, he doesn't miss doing tech support at all. Bliss, what you say, I get in trouble asking if she was watching Disney nasties. Robbie said, I remember one designer was always upset that Photoshop would run out of scratch disk space and they had like 20 gigs of personal pictures on a work computer and refused to remove them. Oh, yes. Yes, Rob. We always have to be very careful. I mean, I clean off computers the best I can. Like I was working on a girl's computer today, and I don't even know how in the world she was using it because she just had a few megabytes of space. And so I had to go in, clean a bunch of profiles off. That got her back almost 50 gigabytes of space. Plus, I did, a regular cleanup, getting rid of temporary files and all that. Um, but when you look at somebody's hard drive and it's in the red, you wonder, how, how are they even functioning with this computer? Oh, I know. I need to do it, Wes, but I don't have my mixer hooked up. I promise you I will do the shucky ducky quack quack here before long. Oh, yes, that too. And let's not talk about their MP3 collection, LOL. I was cleaning this other girl's computer off the other day, and she had a bunch of personal pictures on there. And it's like, why do you store personal pictures on your work computer? That just doesn't seem wise to me. Um, that's what your home computer's for. Um, what's the Tarantino news, Rob? I just don't have time to keep up on anything anymore. It just uh, oh, is it about him making an 11th and final feature length film before hanging up his director's hat? Rob, I was just looking that up. He's only 59 though. But then he's gonna evidently shoot an 8 episode TV series too. So I don't know if that's the news that you were talking about. written his final film. Will start directing it soon. It's called The Movie Critic. Now that sounds intriguing to me. A little sad that at 59 he's going to hang up his hat as far as directing movies after one more film. Yeah, I think a lot of Kelly. I think a lot of directors do that too. They or actors will uh, stop acting altogether or as much and step behind the camera, which like Keith Gordon did it, and I love Keith Gordon. But I love movies. I love his acting. Um, but I also love some of the movies he's directed as well. So it might be a good thing for Tarantino to do this. I don't envision it being a bad thing. Novel writing, well, that would be that would be interesting too. Ooh, a female lead. Well, that'll be good too. Rob, you say I can see wanting to quit with a perfect score, and he wants to spend time with his family. Yeah, that is a good point to make, Rob, because um, to to stop while you're ahead, to quit on a high note, and all of that, and then still have time to like he said, spend time with his family. So, now that I've complained about work and stuff like that, we're going to get back into the John Cusack movies. So, the last one we covered last night was Con Air. So, we're going to start tonight with Chicago Cab from 1997. And John Cusack plays a character only referred to as Scary Man. Um, so, let's do a little plot synopsis for this one because, well, let me first say who else is in this. Um, Michael Ironside, for one, um, Michael Shannon, and as I said, of course, John Cusack. But with a character named like Scary Man, I wouldn't expect this to be a very big character. But John C. Riley's also in this. Laurie Metcalf. Um, see if there's any. Kevin J. O'Connor. Julianne Moore. Julianne Moore plays distraught woman. um, so let's talk a little bit about the plot of Chicago Cab, which is this. And I hear Brandon whining, so it may be possible I have to go and take care of him in a second. There is more to this story than the review lets on. It reflects all different facets of society over one driver's shift. He starts out, it seems, as a cold, ignorant man, but his character develops as the different people of Chicago come and go. His character shows through when he tells a woman the truth about one of the guys he has in his cab. One highlight of this is the amount of cameos by well known faces who seem to be doing this film for, um, I don't know, people. Gosh, some of these, I don't know if that's credit or what, but anyway. The cab driver reacts well to the madness surrounding him, and you can almost share his tiredness at the end of the shift. Crackhead stoners, posh randy lawyers, irate Pakistanis, and the highs and lows of the working day are dealt with in this low budget film. This, I guess, was an extension of an original play called Hell Cab that opened in Chicago in 1992. Let's see if we got some more trivia. Gillian Anderson and Shuli Cohen's debut, in case anybody was interested in that. So let's see what, not a lot of information about it, but it is a low budget film, as I said. But yeah, not a lot about it, but I'd almost want to watch it just for curiosity reasons. Um, so has anybody seen Chicago Cab? Blissful says she hasn't seen this one. Anybody else taking a gander at this one? Feel free to chime in. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Anastasia, where John Cusack does the voice of Dimitri. This is a 1997 animated film. So Meg Ryan does Anastasia's voice. As I said, John Cusack does Dimitri's voice. Christopher Lloyd, Kelsey Grammer, Bernadette Peters, Hank Azaria, Kirsten Dunst, Angela Lansbury, Andrea Martin. A lot of pretty big names, really, that did voices in this animated film. So the plot of Anastasia is the daughter of the last Russian Tsar, Nicholas II. Anastasia is found by two Russian con men, Dmitri, John Cusack's character, and Vladimir, Kelsey Grammer's character, who seek the reward that her grandmother, the Dowager Empress Marie Feodorovna, I believe, promised to the ones who will find her. But the evil mystic of the Tsar family, Grigory Rasputin, played by Christopher Lloyd, still wants the Romanov family to be destroyed forever. So, definitely, if you want to hear the voice of John Cusack in an animated film, then here's your chance. Rob says nope on Chicago Cab. Texas says never heard of it. Blissful, are you talking about Anastasia? I did watch this over and over. My niece loved this one. LOL. Yeah, when back in my babysitting days, there were a lot of animated movies and just regular cartoons that I watched. The next movie is also from 1997. So he did a lot of stuff. John Cusack did several films in 1997. This next one is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and he plays John Kelso. This is another one that I know the title. I remember when the movie came out, but I don't believe I've ever watched it. I'm pretty daggone sure I haven't watched it, but Clint Eastwood directed it. Kevin Spacey is also in it. Let's see, Jude Law, Kim Hunter, and in case you need a little plot synopsis for this panoramic tale of Savannah, Georgia's eccentricities focuses on a murder and the subsequent trial of James Arthur Williams, played by Kevin Spacey, self-made man, art collector, antiques dealer, and semi-closeted homosexual. John Cusack, a magazine reporter, finds himself in Savannah amidst the beautiful architecture and odd doings to write a feature on one of Williams' famous Christmas parties. He is intrigued by Williams from the start, but his curiosity is piqued when he meets Jim's violent, young, and sexy lover, Billy Hanson, played by Jude Law. Later that night, Billy is dead and Kelso stays on to cover the murder trial. Along the way, he encounters the irrepressible Shabless DeVoe, a drag queen comedian, Sunny Seller, lawyer to Williams, whose famous dog Uga is the official mascot of the Georgia Bulldogs, an odd man who keeps flies attached to many leashes on his lapels and threatens daily to poison the water supply, the Married Ladies Card Club, and Minerva, a spiritualist. Between being Jim's buddy, culling up to a torch singer, meeting every eccentric in Savannah, participating in midnight graveyard rituals, and helping solve the mystery surrounding Billy's murder, Kelso has his hands full. So, this is another movie where it seems that John Cusack has a very big part. He's top billed in this movie as well. And, reading more about it, I knew it had to do with a murder, and I believe it's based on a book. Um, but it is one, for whatever reason, I never got around to watching. Rob, you say I really enjoyed it back in the day. Kelly, you say that's a great one. It's a bit of a slow burn and an acquired taste, but really great. Kelly, you confirmed it based on a book of the same name, I believe. And Blissful, you say I watched it, but so long ago. And Texas, you say it's been a long time ago for me also. So, moving right along is a film from 1998. This is My Father, and John Cusack plays Eddie Sharp in this film. Um, so we have Aidan Quinn in this, James Caan. Um, let's see, those are the big names I'm seeing in there. Um, So the plot synopsis for This Is My Father. Widowed Kieran Johnson is a lonely middle-aged Chicago-based high school history teacher who feels disconnected to his life. He decides to take a trip to his mother's small old hometown of Kilronan County, Galloway, Ireland, after he discovers an old photograph of her, she who now cannot speak due to a stroke, with a man he has never seen. He suspects this man may be his biological father. On the urging of his sister, Karen takes his teenage nephew Jack on the trip, and Kilronan, Mrs. Kearney, the innkeeper's mother, and a bit of a gypsy woman who has lived in the area for a better part of her life, tells Karen and Jack about life in the town in 1939 when a high spirited Fiona Flynn, Karen's mother, started seeing a peat farmer named Karen O'Day. Karen O'Day grew up a poorhouse bastard, and as such, he was always shy and considered an outsider amongst the townsfolk. Because of his standing in the community and the differences in their ages, she being only 17, he in his 30s, Fiona and Kieran's relationship was looked down upon by those considered the upstanding in town, including Fiona's widowed mother, Mary Flynn, and those associated with the church. Mrs. Kearney slowly tells the entire story of Kieran and Fiona's relationship, the tragedy that prevented their love for not being enough to endure the scrutiny, the stories of the curses that befell the Flynn family, and the truth behind the person Kieran Johnson knew as his father. So, this one I would be interested in seeing too, because it sounds like it's got a really good storyline to it. Um and and it's got some, really good actors in it as well. John Cusack not being the only one. Um so this is another one that I'm going to actively seek out. Blissful, you say that sounds familiar. Um, but y'all keep talking about any and all of these movies. I'm going to move along to another film from 1998, The Thin Red Line, in which John Cusack plays Captain John Gaff. This one I've heard of, and I know it's pretty much a war movie, but again, it is not one that I have watched, but I would like to see it. Sean Penn is also in this, Nick Nolte, Adrian Brody. I know a lot of people don't like Adrian Brody. George Clooney. As I said, John Cusack plays Captain John Gaff. Paul Gleason, Woody Harrelson. This is based on a book, too, by James Jones. So a little bit of a plot synopsis for this one. U.S. Army Private Witt is found and imprisoned on a troop carrier by his company First Sergeant Welsh. The men of C Company, 1st Battalion, 27th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division have been brought to Guadalcanal as reinforcements in the campaign to secure Henderson Field and seize the island from the Japanese. They arrive near Hill 210, a key Japanese position. Their task is to capture the hill at all costs. What happens next is a story of redemption and the meaninglessness of war, regardless of the outcome. Now, I mentioned that Adrian Brody is in this, but most of his scenes were cut from the film, and he wasn't aware of these changes until he saw the film at the premiere. Brody came to the premiere expecting to see himself as the lead character and was shocked when he saw that he was barely featured in the film, especially since Corporal Fife was the central character in the novel on which the movie was based. I bet he was kind of pissed. Billy Bob Thornton recorded a narration for the 2-hour and 50-minute epic under the supervision of writer and director Terrence Malick. However, the final print of the film has voiceovers by 8 of the main characters in the film. None of the narration from Thornton is in the final print. In addition, several other stars who filmed scenes were left on the cutting room floor, including Bill Pullman, Gary Oldman, Lucas Haas, Viggo Mortensen, Martin Sheen, Jason Patrick, and Mickey Rourke. So, unfortunately, it sounds like several people kind of got wasted. Their talents got wasted. Terrence Malick did offer Edward Norton a part, having been impressed by his performance in Primal Fear in 1996, one of my favorite films. Norton even flew out to Austin to meet Malick, but he wasn't cast. Leonardo DiCaprio, Matthew McConaughey, Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt, Nicolas Cage, Kevin Costner, Peter Berg, Ethan Hawke, Dermot Mulroney, and William Baldwin were considered for roles and met with Malick. Josh Hartnett, guys, auditioned for the film 8 times, but he never once met Terrence Malick. Yeah. I was trying to see if there was anything about John Cusack really in here, but I didn't see any trivia about him. This is another one though. I like war movies in general, but what really piqued my interest when I was reading the plot synopsis, and it mentions the meaninglessness of war. And I have always thought, no offense to any servicemen including any of you guys in here that have ever served in military forces, either in wartime or otherwise. No offense at all to you guys, but I have always been anti-war. My dad and I used to have arguments that dad tried to impress upon me that war was necessary at some points to prevent us from being taken over by communist parties. And so, I think my dad just found it hard to believe that he would be able to father a child that didn't believe in war. I still don't believe in war. I respect servicemen. I respect military guys, unless they're just those really cocky asshole types that just act like they want to go to war just for the purpose of killing people. Um, but the real guys, the real heroes and stuff like that, I have the utmost respect for those guys. And my own husband was even in the army. Steve thankfully never had to be in war, but I still respect him for what he did and the sacrifices he made and all of that. So, although I have the utmost respect for anybody that was in any branch of military, I had a cousin. I had a cousin that was in the army. I had another cousin that uh, was in the Marines. So there you go. And so I would really like to see something that brings to the forefront, can't talk, forefront how meaninglessness or how meaningless war is. Because I don't think too many movies portray it that way. Sometimes they portray atrocities. There have been Vietnam movies and stuff like that pretty much put that at the forefront. But never have I heard to it referred to as meaningless. And I that was what really struck me when I was reading that plot synopsis for it. Rob, you say Aidan Quinn's brother wrote and directed that one. Okay, that makes sense. Rob, you say Thin Red Line is great. Terrence Malick is a hell of a director. And Kelly, you say same for me, Dana. 90% of wars are unnecessary. So moving right along to the next movie is 1999's The Jack Bull. This was a TV movie, and John Cusack plays a character named Merle Redding. I have definitely not seen this one. This looks like a Western, pretty much, and I'm not against Westerns at all. John Goodman is also on this, John C. McGinley, John Savage. Let's see. And also Scott Wilson is in this. It looks like John Cusack is a leading character in this. He and John Goodman are pretty much the headliners on this movie. The plot synopsis: the Jack Bull tells the story of Merle Redding, a Wyoming horse trader who clashes with Henry Ballard, a fellow rancher. After Ballard abuses two of Merle's horses and their Crow Indian caretaker, Billy, uh, let's see, when Judge Wilkins throws out Merle's complaint, the war he wages to force Ballard to nurse the emaciated animals back to health escalates into a vigilante manhunt, murder, and the possible defeat of Wyoming's bid for statehood. The title is derived from the names of two dog breeds, Jack Russell and Bulldog. Merle Redding is said to have the tenacity of a Jack Russell and the strength of a bulldog when angered. I'm just wondering if my dad has seen this. My dad likes many, many westerns. But again, this one, even though it's a TV movie, it kind of has me intrigued. And I'm really quite interested in seeing it, to be honest. Well, I'm so happy that some people are, agreeing with me, and I'm not saying you boys are not agreeing. You may just not feel as passionately about it as the ladies in here do, possibly. Um, I love westerns too. Well-made westerns, I love them. I absolutely love them. And spaghetti westerns are I think my absolute favorite. Guys, I'm gonna go. I'm man Brandon's down on the floor, and that's why he's whining. So I will be right back. Just bear with me here. Brandon. So Kelly is saying Blissful, check out Midnight in the Garden. It's really smart and really twisted. A twisted who done it. That sentence alone, Kelly, is making me want to watch it more and more. Blissful, you say my family has been military since the Revolutionary War, and the look in their eyes when they come home was heartbreaking. Exactly. Blissful, you say, Kelly, I'll have to. I love a good whodunit. Me too, girls. Me too. So, moving right along, is also a movie from 1999, Pushing 10. Uh, and John Cusack plays a character, Nick Falzone. Now, Pushing 10, I believe, is one that I've seen part of, but not all of. Believe it or not. Um, so not only is John Cusack in this, but Billy Bob Thornton, Kate Blanchett, Angelina Jolie. That's about it for me as far as people that I know right off. Plot synopsis for Pushing 10. Nick and the other boys and Vicki Lewis, working the hot spot of air traffic control in New York, are impressed with themselves to say the least. They thrive on the no room for error, fast paced job and let it affect their lives. The undisputed king of Pushing 10, the Foul Zone, rules his workplace and his wedded life with the same short attention span that gets planes where they need to be in the nick of time. That is until Russell Bell, a new transfer with a reputation for recklessness, but a record of pure perfection, shatters the tensely held status quo. The game of one-upmanship between the two flies so high as to lead Nick into Russell's bed with his wife. His sandy slipping just as fast as his hold on number one Cusack's controller is thrown out of control when Thornton's Wanderer quickly leaves town. Nick must now find a way to regain his sanity and repair his marriage before he breaks down completely. So, what I do remember of watching this, I did like it. I don't feel like this was a typical John Cusack movie, but that does not mean in any way, shape, or form that it's a bad movie. I do think that John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton worked well together, playing off of one another and all of that. And I really, this is another one I really envision myself um, going back to watch the whole thing, um, because from what I remember, the parts that I saw were interesting enough to keep my attention. I don't know really exactly why I didn't finish it. Maybe there was something pressing that I had to take care of, and then I never got back to it. Um, Kelly say, yes, Dana, I thought you had seen it. You have to watch it. I will make sure that I do before long, Kelly. Um, Kelly, you say, my dad was in World War II, 22 years older than my mom, and he never talked about it. We only found out things about his service through records and letters. Blissful, you say, Kelly, they never talk about it, or they talk about the weather. Which, again, you guys keep talking about any and all of these movies that we're talking about tonight. I am moving on to the next one, which is also from 1999, Cradle Will Rock, where John Cusack plays Nelson Rockefeller. And this one was written and directed by Tim Robbins. And Joan Cusack, as well as John Cusack, Carrie Yules, um, Vanessa Redgrave, Bill Murray, Susan Sarandon, Jamie Sheridan, John Turturro, Jack Black. And so, what's the story of this one? In 1930s New York, Orson Welles tries to stage a musical on a still strike under the federal theater program, despite pressure from an establishment fearful of industrial unrest and red activity. Meanwhile, Nelson Rockefeller gets the foyer of his company headquarters decorated, and an Italian countess sells paintings for Mussolini. This film is based on actual events, though it takes liberties with the details. Mark Blitzstein's 1937 anti-capitalist operetta, The Cradle Will Rock, um, about the effort to unionize steelworkers, was originally produced as part of the Federal Theater Project. The Federal Theater Project, 1935 to 1939, in turn was part of the Works Progress Administration, WPA, which was created in 1935 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt to employ people during the Great Depression. Cradle was shut down right before it was due to open because of budget cuts at the FTP. Everyone involved believed the government deliberately cut funding because the play's message offended its more conservative contingent. The planned 1984 version of this story, which had to be abandoned for financial reasons, would have been directed and written by Orson Welles himself. Rupert Everett would have played the young Welles, and Amy Irving, his first wife, Virginia Nicholson. Welles's unmade screenplay was published after his death. Tim Robbins has always insisted that he has never read it. Despite the fact that his then wife would have the female lead, Steven Spielberg was unwilling to provide financing to Orson Welles for this project. Spielberg also paid $55,000 for the Rosebud sled around this time. But This is one that kind of sounds interesting to me as well. I would actually like to see John Cusack play Nelson Rockefeller in a movie. So, is there anybody that has seen Cradle Will Rock? Texas, you say, I believe I've seen that one, but it's been ages. So I think a lot of you guys, I claim to be this huge John Cusack fan, but I was just really shocked at the amount of these movies that I either have not seen all of or haven't seen at all. Um, which, moving right along, is Being John Malkovich, which is a movie I, believe it or not, guys, I've never watched. I know of the movie, but I also really don't know what it's about. This one was also from 1999, and John Cusack plays Craig Schwartz. Um, so Cameron Diaz is in this. John Malkovich, of course, the actor. Um, Octavia Spencer, Mary Kay Place. Tell you, okay. And Charlie Sheen also is in this. Um, So the plot for this one: puppeteer Craig Schwartz and animal lover and pet store clerk Lottie Schwartz are just going through the motions of their marriage. Despite not being able to earn a living solely through puppeteering, Craig loves his profession as it allows him to inhabit the skin of others. It begins to take the ability to inhabit the skin of others to the next level when he's forced to take a job as a file clerk for the off-kilter Lester Corp, located on the 5 foot tall, 7.5 floor of a Manhattan office building. Behind one of the filing cabinets in his work area, Craig finds a hidden door, which he learns is a portal into the mind of John Malkovich. The visit through the portal, which lasts 15 minutes, after which the person is spit into a ditch next to the New Jersey Turnpike. Craig is fascinated by the meaning of life associated with this finding. Lottie's trips through the portal make her evaluate her own self. And the confident Maxine Lunn, one of Craig's co-workers, who he tells about the portal if only because he is attracted to her, thinks that is a money-making opportunity and selling trips into Malkovich's mind after office hours for $200 a visit. Craig, Lottie, and Maxine begin to understand that anyone entering the portal has the ability to control Malkovich's mind, which also alters his entire being. This experience makes Maxine fall in love with a composite. This ability to control Malkovich's mind begs the question of the ultimate psychedelic trip for Malkovich himself, who begins to feel that something is not quite right in the world as he knows it. So, a little trivia on this: John Malkovich was approached about this film several times and loved the script, but he and his production crew felt that another actor would fit the role better. Malkovich offered to help produce the film and aid Spike Jonze in any way, but refused to star in it. Eventually, after a couple of years, Malkovich's will was worn down and he agreed to star in the film. John Malkovich claimed that he approached the character of John Malkovich as he would any other fictional role, and that the only thing about his real life that was reflected in the film is his wardrobe. John Cusack read the script after he had asked his agent to present him with the craziest, most unproducible script you can find. Impressed with it, he asked his agent to follow its progress and book him an audition, which won him the role. John Cusack actually took some marionette puppeteering lessons in order to prepare for the film. So not only did he take a bunch of ski lessons, but he actually took some puppeteering lessons to help with this film. At some point in the film, John Malkovich is described as being from Evanston, Illinois. He's not, but that moment, John Cusack's character is inside his mind, and Cusack is from Evanston. The original script has Kevin Bacon in place of Charlie Sheen as Malkovich's actor friend. John Malkovich recommended Sheen for the part. Charlie Sheen was in rehab when he heard about fledgling filmmaker Spike Jonze's eagerness to cast him in this. His feature directorial debut. Sheen accepted the role before having read the script. The name of John Cusack's character is a combined reference to Edward Gordon Craig and Bruce Schwartz. Schwartz is an accomplished American puppeteer, while Craig was a turn of the century theater artist who suggested that actors should be viewed as no more important than marionettes. So there's a little bit of trivia about it. That was something that I could never figure out though about why they made a movie called Being John Malkovich. and, and you know, it had, because I knew there was an actor named John Malkovich, and I'm like, that's weird. But for whatever reason, I never got around to watching the film. So, are there any of you in the chat tonight that have seen Being John Malkovich? Kelly, you say I've seen it, but I forget most of it. Rob, you say one of my all-time favorite films. Love it. Texas, you say I love that one. It's just wacky. Blissful says Texas, we definitely need to watch this one. And so Kelly, you say Rob and you both have. So you know, just reading more about it. See, that's where these streams help me too. They get me encouraged to watch more of these movies and not just stick with the same ones that I've seen over and over again. Kelly said, I remember it was trippy. I think when I saw it, I was too young to really get it. So, moving right along, we're going to come to another one of my all-time favorites, John Cusack movies. And that is High Fidelity. Guys, I absolutely love this freaking movie. I cannot get enough of it. And what's more, there is a reference to Evil Dead 2 in this movie, believe it or not. So John Cusack plays the lead character, Rob Gordon, in this movie. Jack Black is also in this, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Lisa Bonet, Joan Cusack, Tim Robbins, Lily Taylor, Natasha Gregson Wagner, and Sarah Gilbert as well in this movie. For any of you that are watching this now live or might watch it later and you want to know plot synopsis for this, and by the way, this came out in 2000. 30-something Rob Gordon, a former club DJ, owns a not-so-lucrative used record store in Chicago. He not so much employs Barry and Dick, but rather keeps them around as they showed up in the store one day and never left. All three are vinyl and music snobs, but in different ways. Rob has a penchant for compiling top 5 lists. The latest of these lists is his top 5 breakups. It is spurred by the fact that his latest girlfriend, Laura, a lawyer, has just broken up with him. He believed that Laura would be the one who would last, partly as an expectation of where he would be at this stage in his life. Rob admits that there had been a few incidents in their relationship which, in and of themselves, could be grounds for her to want to break up. To his satisfaction, Laura is not on his top 5 list. Rob feels a need not only to review the 5 relationships which go back as far as middle school when he was 12 and try to come to terms with why the woman or girl, as the case may be, left him. but also, in the words of Charlie Nicholson, number 4 on the list, what it all means for why he has ended up where he is, which is nowhere, personally or professionally, close to what he envisioned. He also has to come to terms with what it means that Laura has moved on to Ian Raymond, a man for whom neither had any respect when they were together. Um, so this is once again directed by Stephen Frears. It's based on a book by Nick Hornby, which I believe Nick Hornby is a writer in the UK. Um, let's take a look at some trivia for this. John Cusack and the screenwriters wrote the script with Jack Black in mind for the role of Barry. He nearly turned down the role, but reconsidered. I'm glad that, for whatever you may think of Jack Black, people out there, I think he's perfect for this role. Stevie Wonder originally performed the closing track, I Believe, before Art Garfunkel and Peter Frampton covered it. All three artists are artists that Rob, Dick, and Barry ridicule in the movie. Nick Hornby had no problem with the film version relocating the action from London to Chicago, as he felt that the book was about a lot more than just geography. John Cusack originally wanted Bob Dylan for the Bruce Springsteen cameo part, but Dylan was unavailable, which I think is interesting because I think Bruce Springsteen did a really great job. During an October 2019 AV Club interview with Tim Robbins, he mentioned that he agreed to take the small roles in High Fidelity and Anchorman, even though he knew he would be paid very little for them, because they promised to make him a custom wig for each of the roles, both of which he got to keep after the filming ended. Robbins said that he still owns both of the wigs as of 2019, and he often uses them in Halloween costumes. The Marie DeSalle CD Rob pops in has the following tracks listed on it: Baby I Love Your Way, Eartha Kitt ×2, Patsy Cline ×2 in some versions, Ghostbusters, Beat It, Baby Got Back, 9/11 is a Joke, I Will Survive, Bop, My Heart Will Go On, You Can't Have It, and The Time Is Now. Now, this was the 8th film out of 10 in which John Cusack and Joan Cusack appeared together. The others are Class, 16 Candles, Grandview USA, Broadcast News, Say Anything, Grosse Point Blank, Cradle Will Rock, Martian Child, and War Inc. Now, Harold Ramis and Beverly D'Angelo filmed scenes that were cut from the film but can be viewed as extras on the DVD. Ramis played Rob's father, and D'Angelo played a two-tan woman trying to sell Rob her soon-to-be ex-husband's record collection. Dick Cusack, father to John Cusack and Joan Cusack, appears in his second and final film with his children. There were only two. The first film was Class, which was also John Cusack's debut feature film. Now, here's something interesting. I said there's a reference to Evil Dead 2 in this film. In the Hungarian dubbed version, Barry and Rob are discussing Reservoir Dogs instead of Evil Dead 2 because that film was almost unknown in Hungary that time. At that time, Reservoir Dogs was also the film discussed in a similar scene in the novel. So there's a few more, well, quite a few trivia type things, but I'm not going to read every one of these off to you guys. Um, so some of these quotes, I love the quotes in this film. This to me is a very quotable film. Um, Here's one of Rob's quotes. What came first, the music or the misery? People worry about kids playing with guns or watching violent videos that some sort of culture of violence will take them over. Nobody worries about kids listening to thousands, literally thousands of songs about heartbreak, rejection, pain, misery, and loss. Did I listen to pop music because I was miserable, or was I miserable because I listened to pop music? Um, Rob also says, top 5 things I miss about Laura. 1, sense of humor. Very dry, but it can also be warm and forgiving. And she's got one of the best all time laughs in the history of all time laughs. She laughs with her entire body. 2, she's got character. At least she had character before the Ian nightmare. She's loyal and honest, and she doesn't even take it out on people when she's having a bad day. That's character. 3, I miss her smell and the way she tastes. It's a mystery of human chemistry, and I don't understand it. Some people, as far as her senses are concerned, I just feel like, or just feel like home. Rob also says, I really dig how she walks around. It's like she doesn't care how she looks or what she projects. And it's not that she doesn't care, it's just that she's not affected, I guess. And that gives her grace. And 5, she does this thing in bed where she can't get to sleep. She kind of half moans and then rubs her feet together an equal number of times. It just kills me. Believe me, I mean, I could do a top 5 things about her that drive me crazy, but it's just your garden variety women, schizo stuff. And that's the kind of thing that got me here. Okay. Why do I think those quotes are so important? Okay. Because this clearly shows no matter how obnoxious the character of Rob can be at other points in the film, that list that he gives about Laura shows a man who is so in love with this woman that it's just literally destroying him inside that she has left him. Okay. Um, I would love my husband to talk about me that way. Even he could even have the schizo part in there. Um, but uh and I hope that your guys' relationships, those of you guys that are in relationships now, that you're still at that point in your relationship where the man can say those things about the woman in a relationship, and it really means something. Because that not only is this movie about music and friendships and, you know, in some ways sexual escapades, it's about real relationships, you know, and that never seems to take a back seat to the other things. It's always there. It's always really close by. It doesn't take a vacation or anything. Even when like I say, Rob is being super obnoxious and being a dick and all that, there's always that undercurrent that that he has never fallen out of love with Laura. Um, Even when he has a fling with Lisa Bonet's character in the film. I truly don't see the character of Rob being totally invested in that character, Lisa Bonet's character. His mind and his heart, especially, are still with Laura. And he's literally trying to, well, I hate to say it this way, but he's trying to fuck himself out of the pain of Laura leaving him. He thinks, you know, if he has enough sex, that eventually he's going to forget about Laura. But he can't forget about Laura because we know, and he knows down deep, that Laura is his soulmate. Laura is the one that he's meant to be with. Texas says one of my all-time favorites. Love the book as well. Rob says High Fidelity is great. I totally agree with you, Rob. Kelly says, I think Jack Black is hilarious. And Kelly also loves High Fidelity. Texas said, when I was working at Borders, a coworker had gone to see it and said I reminded her of Jack Black's character. She said, but you're not an asshole. I couldn't stop laughing. Robbie said, wow, I'm sitting right here. Sorry, Rob. I mean, Rob Gordon in the movie, not Rob Scott. Sorry about that, buddy. You're like, damn, what the fuck? Yeah, I gotta watch that, don't I? So if you have not seen High Fidelity, oh my gosh. For one of the later John Cusack films, this one definitely tops my list of, you know, we're talking about John Cusack in his 30s. We're not talking about 17-year-old John Cusack. We're not talking about 20-something-year-old Cusack. At this point, he's getting a little bit of an age on him. He's not an old man at this point. But he's, I'm not saying that the movies like Say Anything and The Sure Thing and all that were juvenile in any way. I'm just saying that I think High Fidelity was one of the films where he hit a mature level. Because it's dealing with something other than teenage or early 20s relationships, even though it goes back in Rob Gordon's past and talks about the many mistakes he made with different women, and why he ultimately continually got rejected by these women. So let me look at some more of these quotes because, like I said, this movie is very quotable. This one is a humorous one. When he was talking about a girlfriend he had in college, Penny, he said, sometimes I got so bored of trying to touch her breasts that I would try to touch her between her legs. It was like trying to borrow $1, getting turned down and asking for 50 grand instead. So, and then he talks about the making of a great compilation tape. Like breaking up is hard to do and takes ages longer than it might seem. You got to kick off with a killer to grab attention. Then you got to take it up a notch, but you don't want to blow your wad. So then you got to cool it off a notch. There are a lot of rules. Anyway, I started to make a tape in my head for Laura, full of stuff she likes, full of stuff that will make her happy. For the first time, I can sort of see how that's done. That is another line too where you can tell how much in love he is with Laura. And here's a conversation that Rob and Laura have about other women. Rob says, that other girl or other women, whatever, I mean, I was thinking that they're just fantasies, and they always seem really great because there's never any problems. And if there are, they're cute problems like, we bought each other the same Christmas present, or she wants to go see a movie that I've already seen, and then I come home and you and I have real problems and you don't even want to see the movie I want to see, period. There's no lingerie. And Laura says, I have lingerie. Rob says, yes, you do. You have great lingerie, but you also have the cotton underwear that's been washed 1,000 times and it's hanging on the thing. And they have it too. It's just that I don't have to see it because it's not in the fancy. Do you understand? I'm tired of the fancy because it doesn't really exist. And there are never really any surprises. And it never really, and Laura finishes the sentence, delivers. And Rob says, delivers, right. And I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of everything else for that matter. But I don't ever seem to get tired of you. Okay. So, I would just melt to the floor if some guy mention that way because not to talk badly about my husband. I'm not meaning to talk badly about him, but and Steve would probably kill me if he knew I was mentioning this. But one of the flaws that and I have many flaws too. I'm not putting myself out of the equation. But one of Steve's flaws that I see is he lives in too much of a fantasy world about women, about how women are supposed to look, about how women are supposed to dress. Because Steve spent most of his mature life before we were dating, living in that fantasy world of watching actresses on movies that, he's not seeing these same women in their sweatpants, lounging around the house, no makeup, hair all wild and crazy. He is seeing made up women who are very attractive women, but he's not seeing them behind the camera. He's only seeing them once they've been fixed up, hair's fixed, makeup's put on, the perfect clothes, and then they're put in front of the camera. Because who, honestly, what guy wants to watch women, supposedly glamorous women, walking around in sweatpants with their hair all down and stringy and no makeup? They don't. That's part of the fantasy. But the thing I like about that conversation between Rob and Laura is he basically says, he admits that is a fantasy, but he's tired of the fantasy, but he never gets tired of Laura. And that is the thing that makes all the sense in the world to me. And I figure it would make a lot of sense to other women as well. So I may see if there's another few quotes I can read to you. So there's another little kind of inner monologue that Rob has about Laura. He says, I can see now I never really committed to Laura. I always had one foot out the door, and that prevented me from doing a lot of things, like thinking about my future. And I guess it made more sense to commit to nothing, keep my options open. And that's suicide by tiny increments. And that really says a lot, too. That is a very bold statement for a man, even an actor in a movie, a character in a movie to say. You don't really hear that mentioned in a lot of movies. They don't really dissect relationships like I feel like High Fidelity does. Here's a funny exchange when Dick doesn't want, or I mean, not Dick, but Barry does not want to sell. He refuses to sell a record to this guy. Um, and the guy leaves, kind of mortified because he didn't get it. But there's a guy named Lewis that hangs out with them who, after the other guy leaves, he says, I don't have that record. I'll buy it for 40. Rob says, sold. And Lewis says, now, why would you sell it to me and not to him? And Barry says, because you're not a geek, Lewis. And Lewis says, you guys are snobs. Dick says, no, we're not. Lewis says, yeah, seriously, you're totally elitist. You feel like the unappreciated scholar, so you shit on to people who know less than you. And Rob, Barry, and Dick all scream no. And Lewis says, which is everybody. And then Rob, Barry, and Dick say, yeah. And Lewis says, that's so sad. Here's another quote about Laura that you guys are going to get so sick of hearing these quotes, but Rob makes another uh, declaration about Laura. She didn't make me miserable or anxious or ill at ease. It sounds boring, but it wasn't. It wasn't spectacular either. It was just good, really good. Another, I like Stevie Wonder's music, but this whole exchange between Barry and older gentleman that comes into the store to buy. I just called to say I love you, and he said it's for his daughter's birthday. And Barry says, "Yeah, we have it." And the customer says, "Great, great. Can I have it?" And Barry says, "No, no, you can't." And the customer says, "Why not?" Barry says, "Well, it's sentimental, tacky crap. Do we look like the kind of store that sells I just called to say I love you? Go to the mall." And the customer says, "What's your problem?" Barry says, "Do you even know your daughter? There's no way she likes that song." Oh, oh, is she in a coma? So, yeah, I could go on and on and on about the great quotes in High Fidelity, but I won't. But I just want to reiterate again that this is a freaking fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, try to find a way to watch it, preferably for free. I'm not telling you to go out and buy it. I recently got the Blu ray of it and rewatched it again and just fell in love with it all over again. Texas, you say, I've seen that plenty of times in record stores I used to frequent. I laughed my ass off. Blissful says savage. So I'm going to move away from High Fidelity here and we'll move on to the next film, which is America's Sweethearts, which is another one that I have not seen all of. This was from 2001. John Cusack plays a character of Eddie Thomas. And he stars in this with Julia Roberts, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Billy Crystal, Stanley Tucci, Hank Azaria, Christopher Walken, Alan Arkin, Seth Green, Larry King. Um, yeah, that's it, I think, for the big names. So what's this one about? In the midst of a nasty public breakup of married movie stars, a studio publicist scrambles to put a cap on the escalating situation as the couple's latest film has found its only print kidnapped by the director. So, little trivia, Billy Crystal had written the part of Eddie for himself years ago, but Joe Roth persuaded Crystal to take on the role of lead the publicist as he felt Crystal was too old to play the part by then. This was Joe Roth's first picture as a director in 11 years. Um, Initially, Billy Crystal was slated to direct the picture. When Roth read the script, he was totally immersed and liked the script so much he wanted to direct. Crystal granted Roth's request to direct the picture and stayed on as producer. Robert Downey Jr. was also originally slated to play Eddie. John Cusack was cast instead when Downey's legal problems raised doubts as to whether he would be available for filming. So, guys, if Robert Downey Jr. hadn't had legal problems at the time, he may have been in the role and John Cusack might have not been. Julia Roberts turned down the lead role for the supporting one. This is the second movie based on a Hollywood actress falling for someone from the showbiz. Only in Notting Hill, the guy was a bookstore owner. Steve Pink, who played John Cusack's limo driver, also played Cusack's classmate in Grosse Point Blank. Pink was also a screenwriter for High Fidelity and directed Hot Tub Time Machine, both starring Cusack, which we're going to talk about Hot Tub Time Machine eventually. When Dave enters the hotel bar to speak with Lee, Dave says to the bartender, I'll have whatever he's having. This is an in joke in reference to the famous I'll have what she's having scene in When Harry Met Sally, which also starred Billy Crystal. John Cusack's real life sister, Ann Cusack, appears uncredited in the role of Lee's personal assistant. Julia Roberts is 2 years older than Catherine Zeta Jones, yet in the movie it is strongly implied that Gwen Zeta Jones is the older sister of Kiki Roberts. And this was also the second time Alan Arkin plays John Cusack's reluctant psychologist. The first was in Grosse Point Blank. Billy Crystal wanted Meg Ryan to co-star as she did in When Harry Met Sally. The interviewer who questioned him for Analyze This said he would like to see them together again, but Ryan's personal problems made this difficult, so he picked other people for the film. I'm not sure what Meg Ryan's personal problems were at the time. Maybe some of you know. But this is another one that I would like to go back and watch all of it, because I it's kind of a cutesy movie, but still, yeah, not on the level of High Fidelity by any stretch of the imagination, but I still, like I said, would like to go back and rewatch it. Liz, you said one of my mom's favorites. Oh, well, thanks for stopping by, Rob. In case you're still in here to hear me say bye, or if you see this later, you have a great night too. And again, thanks for stopping in. Oh yes, definitely Texas. Go ahead and take some medicine. Kelly, you say I'll be back in a little bit if you're still on. Be right back. Okay, Kelly, I probably will be. Got a few more movies to go through. Liz, what are you talking about if Robert Downey Jr. had been in that part instead of John Cusack? Probably so, even though I love Robert Downey Jr. as well. Texas, you say, I need to rewatch. I saw it when it first came out and thought it was okay. Yeah. Which brings us to the next movie in 2001, which is Serendipity, which I believe that I've watched this one, but it has been so long since I've watched it. He plays a John Cusack plays a character named Jonathan Traeger. And yes, this is a romance type of movie. Not only is John Cusack in it, but Kate Beckinsale, Jeremy Piven, Eugene Levy. And that's about all the names I recall. So, a little bit of a plot synopsis for this. Jonathan Traeger and Sarah Thomas met while shopping for gloves in New York. Though buying for their respective lovers, the magic was right, and the night of Christmas shopping turned into romance. John wanted to explore things further, but Sarah wasn't sure their love was meant to be. They decided to test fate by splitting up, and seeing if destiny brought them back together. Many years later, having lost each other that night, both are engaged to be married. Still, neither can shake the need to give fate one last chance to reunite them. John enlists the help of his best man to track down the girl he can't forget, starting at the store where they met. Sarah asks her new age musician fiance for a break before the wedding, and with her best friend in tow, flies from California to New York, hoping destiny will bring her soulmate back. Near misses and classic Shakespearean confusion bring the two close to meeting a number of times, but fate will have the final word on whether it was meant to be. Um, Yeah, I remember this one very vaguely, but yet I remember liking it. And I really, really would like to revisit it. So a little bit of trivia about this. John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale filmed only a few days together during the shoot, much like their characters saw each other only for a limited time. The drink Sarah and Jonathan have at Serendipity 3 is its famous frozen hot chocolate. Also, since the movie opened, the table where they sit has been called the Star Table at the restaurant. During filming of this movie in New York City, the following note was posted on a production trailer. Yes, we are filming a movie. It is called Serendipity. It stars John Cusack and some girl from Britain that you wouldn't know, even if we told you her name. We'll be shooting tonight until mid morning. Please don't ask the crew any questions, even if they don't look like they're working. They are thinking. Following the destruction of the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001, images of the World Trade Center towers were digitally removed from all skyline shots of New York City, as were other movies that had the World Trade Center towers. Kate Beckinsale and Molly Shannon disagree with using stunt doubles and perform their own stunts. The book Love in the Time of Cholera is mentioned in another John Cusack movie, High Fidelity. Jonathan tells Sarah that he can make out the constellation Cassiopeia in the freckles on her arm. In the movie The Sure Thing, John Cusack's character points out the constellation Cassiopeia to Allison, his love interest. So, yeah, this one doesn't, from what I can remember, was not, in my opinion, as much of a deep down love story as High Fidelity was. And, you can't talk me out of that, but a sweet story nonetheless. And like I said, I want to go back and revisit it at some point. Um, which, moving right along to the next film, which is Max from 2002. And John Cusack plays the lead character, Max Rothman. This I have not seen. I don't believe I've heard of it at all. Um, some Noah Taylor is on this, Lily Sobieski, Molly Parker. Mm, several people not familiar with their names. So a little bit of plot synopsis for this one. Munich, 1918. German Jew Max Rothman has returned to much of his pre-war life, which includes to his wife Nina and their two children, to his mistress Lesalore von Peltz, and to his work as an art dealer. He has, however, not returned to being an aspiring painter, as he lost his dominant right arm during the war. He is approached by an aspiring painter, a 30-year-old Austrian war veteran named Adolf Hitler, who wants him to show his works. Although he doesn't think the paintings are all that original, and he doesn't really like Hitler as a person, Rothman takes Hitler under his wings, if only because of their camaraderie of being war veterans and knowing that Hitler had nothing and no one to come back to after the war, unlike himself. Rothman believes that Hitler has promise if only he can find his original artistic point of view. In part out of need for money, Hitler, on the urging of Captain Karl Mayer, agrees to work for the army as a political spokesman in anti-Semitic propaganda. Slowly, Hitler's view becomes a holistic one of the new world where he begins to meld his art and politics. Rothman becomes excited about Hitler's artistic viewpoint despite its anti-Semitic bent. The question becomes if the sentiments behind the view will take over its artistic merit. And it is mentioned that this is a controversial movie, and there's no doubt just by reading that plot synopsis that it's controversial. Noah Taylor does play Adolf Hitler in this movie. Um, so to get this controversial movie financed, producer and star John Cusack took no salary for acting in the lead role. Noah Taylor would later play Adolf Hitler again on the TV series Preacher in 2016. Um, According to Mino Mejez, John Cusack contracted pneumonia while filming the final scene where he lies in the snow. It was touch and go. He had to go in and get a whole dose of antibiotics and was sick for a month afterwards. So, guys, we could have very well lost the great John Cusack. After or when this movie is being made. Um, I'm a little intrigued by this movie, by the plot synopsis, and I'm not saying that I would never watch it, but it's going to be a little bit lower on my list of must watch films out of all these John Cusack films I've talked about that I have not watched. Which brings us to 2002's adaptation, uh, where John Cusack has an uncredited role in this movie. Um, but Nicolas Cage, Meryl Streep, let's see, Peter Jason. So, what's the story behind this one? While his latest movie, Being John Malkovich, is in production, screenwriter Charlie Kaufman is hired by Valerie Thomas to adapt Susan Orlean's nonfiction book, The Orchid Thief, for the screen. Thomas bought the movie rights before Orlean wrote the book when it was only an article in The New Yorker. The book details the story of a rare orchid hunter, John LaRock, whose passion for orchids and horticulture made Orlean discover passion and beauty for the first time in her life. Charlie wants to be faithful to the book in his adaptation, but despite LaRock himself being an interesting character in his own right, Charlie is having difficulty finding enough material in LaRock to fill a movie, while equally not having enough to say cinematically about the beauty of orchids. At the same time, Charlie's going through other issues in his life. His insecurity as a person doesn't allow him to act upon his feelings for Amelia Cavan, who is interested in him as a man. And Charlie's twin brother, pretentious Donald, has moved into his house with a goal of also becoming a screenwriter. Despite not admiring Donald as a screenwriter, Charlie asks for his advice. Together, they feel that there is some interesting subtext in the book on which Orlean herself can only elaborate if only Charlie has the nerve to talk to her. If she can't or won't elaborate, they may have to find out the meaning of that subtext on their own. Interestingly enough, Nicolas Cage has said that during the filming of this movie, he ignored all of his acting instincts and played the part of Charlie Kaufman exactly as director Spike Jonze asked him to. He then received an Academy Award for it, or Academy Award nomination for it. I was trying to see if they had anything listed more about John Cusack. All three of the main stars of Con Air appear in this film: Nicolas Cage, John Malkovich, and John Cusack. Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill is mentioned in the film. De Palma directed Nicolas Cage in Snake Eyes in 1998, which y'all will remember that I covered when I was in the midst of the De Palma films. So they really don't mention a lot about John Cusack in this. So that one's probably not going to be another one that is at the top of my list to watch really quickly. Which brings us to a movie I do have on DVD. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember it being pretty good. Is Identity from 2003, and John Cusack plays a character called Ed. So Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet, Clea Duvall, John C. McGinley, Jake Busey, Rebecca De Mornay, Marshall Bell are all in this movie. A little bit of plot synopsis on this. Malcolm Rivers has been convicted as the perpetrator of several murders and is sentenced to death. An 11th hour defense by his lawyers and psychiatrists that Malcolm is insane based on new evidence has resulted in them meeting with the prosecutors and the judge to discuss whether the verdict should be overturned. Meanwhile, on a dark night during a torrential rainstorm in the Nevada desert, a series of chain reaction events results in several people needing to stay at an out-of-the-way motel managed by Larry. They are ex-cop, now limo driver Ed, John Cusack's character, and his client, Caroline, a diva of once famous actress, quiet adolescent Timmy, his stepfather George, and his mother Alice, who was seriously injured when Ed accidentally ran over her as she watched George change their flat tire. Prostitute Paris, who was the unwitting cause of George's flat tire, newlyweds Lou and Jenny, whose marriage is based on a lie, and police officer Rhodes, who was en route escorting prisoner Robert to his new institution. None can leave because of washed out roads. All the other businesses around the motel are closed because of the storm, and all communication in and out is not functioning also because of the storm. One by one, they are murdered. The murderer leaving a calling card of a motel room key, starting with the room 10 key and working his way, presumably to the room 1 key, when the last person will be dead. Those still alive banded somewhat together under Officer Rhodes and Ed's direction to find out which of the 11 is the murderer. And if based on one of their theories that they were brought to the motel by some force by the murderer as his intended targets, whether those still alive can discover who the murderer is, discover why he hasn't chosen to kill them, and be able to subdue him may well determine Malcolm's fate. Texas, you say, I love this one a lot, especially the use of Nick Drake's song Northern Sky, which I have sang to Bliss. Oh, that is so sweet. Um, Texas, you say, I've never seen Max either. I remember it, but never watched. Blissful, you say, I think my pets are conspiring against me. Sometimes I think mine are conspiring against me as well. Um, Rooster, you say, I think this is why I like Cusack. The rows he chooses are very eclectic. Yeah, definitely. Blissful says, I like that about him as well, Rooster. Texas agrees. Texas, you say adaptation is so great. Well, if it gets Texas's seal of approval, he really has good taste. He and Blissful both do. So that may push me into watching that sooner rather than later. Yeah, when I was looking at this list, that was how I was, Blissful. I can't believe how many of his movies I haven't watched. Texas says this one is a definite watch. Okay. So, moving right along in the list is Runaway Jury from 2003. I believe I have seen this one, but it's been a long while since I've seen it. He John Cusack plays Nicholas Easter in this movie. Again, this is based on a John Grisham novel. You knew it was, right? Um, so not only do we have John Cusack in here, we have Gene Hackman, Dustin Hoffman, Bruce Davison, who I absolutely love as well, Bruce McGill, Jeremy Piven, Jennifer Beals. So little plot synopsis for this. Wendell Rohr is a torts lawyer taking on the gun lobby. Rankin Fitch is a jury consultant for the defendants, and between them, the battle is for the hearts and minds of the jury. But there is someone on the inside. Nicholas Easter is a juror with a girlfriend, Marley, on the outside. They have a past and their own agenda. So, that leads me to believe that although I didn't remember John Cusack's character so much, I remembered a little bit about the movie. But just reading that plot synopsis and refreshing myself a little bit on the movie makes me realize that the Nicholas Easter character is a main part of the movie. This is the 10th movie starring John Cusack and Jeremy Piven. And in 1997, Edward Norton was originally cast in the role of Nicholas Easter with Joel Schumacher directing. Sean Connery and Gwyneth Paltrow were cast in the roles of Fitch and Marley, respectively. But when Schumacher dropped out of the project and it was delayed, the actors moved on to other projects. The project was revived in 2001 when Will Smith was in talks to play Nicholas Easter, and with Jennifer Connelly as Marley and Mike Newell directing. Smith dropped out and the project was again stalled. So this is definitely another one that I want to revisit because I have always liked John Grisham stuff. Um, Honestly, I don't think I like his stuff, but I don't think I've ever read one of his books cover to cover. But I like how people have taken his works and turned them into some great movies. There have been some great movies that have come out of his books. Which, moving right along, brings us to 2005's Must Love Dogs, which is another one that I have on DVD, and it has the beautiful Diane Lane in addition to John Cusack in this. Um, yeah, I love this movie. It has been a really long time since I've watched it. I need to pull this one back off my DVD shelf and watch it again because I remember it being really, really cute and sweet, but a good movie as well, or a great movie. So we have John Cusack, Diane Lane, Elizabeth Perkins, Christopher Plummer, Dermot Mulroney, Stockard Channing. Who else we got here? Not really anybody I know. So, plot synopsis for Must Love Dogs. Preschool teacher Sarah Nolan, Diane Lane, divorced for 8 months, is still grieving the end of her marriage. Although she didn't see it as being perfect, she probably would have stuck it out as what she saw as the better or worse obligation, the wedding vows. That is, if her ex-husband Kevin didn't end it for what ended up being leaving her for a younger woman. Why would you leave Diane Lane? Gosh, what a stupid man. She is urged by her over-supportive family, comprised of her many siblings, their parents, their partners, and her widowed father, to get back into the dating scene, something she has been reluctant to do and not feeling ready. As such, her most proactive sister in the matter, Carol, Elizabeth Perkins, sets her up on an internet dating site. Within her less than prepared state, Sarah does go along with meeting men by the means offered to her. Beyond especially her female siblings, Sarah is given unique perspectives on the whole issue of dating and commitment by her father, Bill, Christopher Plummer, who is exploring dating after losing who was the love of his life and Sarah's mother, thrice divorced Dolly, Stockard Channing. One of Bill's conquests, who he meets online, and Sarah's gay teaching colleague, Leo, Brad William Hink, who she sees as being in the most committed, loving relationship with his partner, Eric, played by Victor Webster, of anyone she knows. Of the men she meets, Sarah makes what she believes is a connection with two, albeit awkward in both cases. One is Bob Connor, Dermot Mulroney, the divorced father of one of her students. Her hesitance in dating him only because of crossing the professional and personal line. The other is custom wood boat builder Jake Anderson, John Cusack, who too was pushed into trying online dating by his best friend and divorce lawyer Charlie, Ben Shinkman, who wants Jake solely to get some action, despite Jake wanting his love life to be more like Laura and Yuri in Dr. Zhivago. Much of what happens between Sarah and the two men is based on what stage they are in post-divorce dating life. It is also dependent on how much Sarah is willing to take a chance on each, which may also include her and the respective man just not meshing at a given point in time and her making a wrong decision in the process based on what she sees as the prospects. According to writer, producer, and director Gary David Goldberg, he gave the script to John Cusack and encouraged him to change any of his character's dialogue to better suit him. Goldberg was surprised by Cusack's response, who later sent him about 35 pages of new dialogue for his character. The dog Mother Teresa was played by two 6-month-old Newfoundland puppies named Molly, who did most of the work, and Mauve, who performed the water scene, both of whom appeared at the end of the movie together. Writer, producer, and director Gary David Goldberg adopted both puppies at the end of filming. John Cusack and Bobby Coleman appeared in Martian Child in 2007, which I'm going to be getting to shortly. But again, I would recommend Must Love Dogs for one of those nice, sweet, some people might think syrupy romance movies. Let's say I don't think I've watched this one. Texas says it's okay. I didn't think it was all that good. Probably need a rewatch. Um, that's a good thing Schumacher didn't direct it, though. Yes, 1980s Betamax. We did talk about 16 Candles last night. Back in 1988, Roscoe's Chicken. That's what you said. I didn't watch that one either. Texas, you say never saw this one. Yes, last night, 1980s Betamax, I did mention Stand By Me and John Cusack being in it. I love that breed of dog too, but I love all breeds of dogs. I'm just a dog person. Yes, and we did talk about the journey of Nanny Yan last night as well. Um, so moving along to the next movie in this list is one that I've never heard of, never seen, and this is The Ice Harvest, also from 2005. John Cusack plays Charlie Arglist. And so we have John Cusack, Billy Bob Thornton. Who else do we have? Megan Marine McDonald, Oliver Platt. That's about it. Um, this was directed by Harold Ramis, believe it or not, and based on a novel by Scott Phillips. So this could be considered a Christmas movie or a Christmas Eve movie. The plot synopsis is larceny, lust, and lethal behavior in icebound Wichita, Kansas. It's Christmas Eve, and this year Charlie Arglist just might have something to celebrate. Charlie, an attorney for the sleazy businesses of Wichita, and his unsavory associate, the steely Vic Kavanaugh, have just successfully embezzled $2 million from Kansas City boss Bill Gerard. But the real prize for Charlie is the stunning Renata, who runs the Sweet Cage strip club. Charlie hopes to slip out of town with Renata, but as daylight fades and the night storm whirls, everyone from Charlie's drinking buddy, Pete Van Houten, to the local police begin to wonder just who exactly is in Charlie's Christmas stocking. And the 12 hours of Christmas Eve are filled with surprises. Now, believe it or not, Harold Ramis offered a role to Bill Murray, but Murray did not return his calls. Bet Bill Murray's kicking himself now. John Cusack's character's last name, Arglist, translate to guile or deceitfulness in German. The Sweet Cage is a defunct restaurant Harold Ramis and his family used to eat at when he was a kid. Its flatware and cutlery were used for an upscale restaurant where Vic was eating. Monica Bellucci was signed to play the character of Renata, but had to back out due to her pregnancy. Scott Phillips initially convinced himself that his novel, The Ice Harvest, was unadaptable. Upon reading it again, he felt that his book could indeed be adapted. Oliver Platt and Billy Bob Thornton appeared in Indecent Proposal together in 1993, and Billy Bob Thornton and Mike Starr would later star in Bad Santa 2 in 2016. And we are given a body count of 6 for this movie. I'm kind of intrigued about this one too. I could see myself hunting this one up. Well, Texas has definitely seen Ice Harvest because he says he loves Ice Harvest. Blissel says I haven't seen this one either. Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear that. You say last week that powerful windstorm tree fell on my house. I had to clean up today. I'm in Russellville, Kentucky, Logan County. There was a gigantic tree that fell on a house in our neighborhood and just demolished it. Yeah, I would imagine so that people got hurt. And I'm surprised that me and Steve, something didn't fall and hit us because we were out trying to pick up our fence that fell most of the way down. And, with 5 dogs, we got to have our fence up between us and the neighbors next door. So moving right along to the next movie is The Contract from 2006. I have not seen this one either, but John Cusack plays a character named Ray. And Morgan Freeman also stars in this. So let's see. We've got John Cusack, Morgan Freeman, Alice Krige, Bill Smitrovich. That's about all I know, just looking through there. So plot synopsis for this. Ray Keene, John Cusack, a father who wants to redeem himself in the eyes of his son, played by Jamie Anderson, is trying to bring Carden, Morgan Freeman, a world-class assassin, Well, that's a turn for Morgan Freeman. A world class assassin to justice. All the while, he must protect his son and evade the assassin's team who are methodically hunting them down in the wilderness. Um, I'm definitely intrigued by this one. I definitely see myself hunting this one up as well. So, has anybody seen The Contract? Let's what you say. I haven't seen this one either. So y'all keep talking about these movies. I'm just trying to get through, a few of them, so we're not hopefully going on till almost midnight like I was last night. So the next one is 2007's Grace is Gone. John Cusack plays Stanley Phillips in this one. Um, yeah, I knew of this one, but sadly, this is one that I haven't watched. But I need to. Desperately, I need to. Um, so not only is let's see if there's any other. Marissa Tomei is also in this. Mary Kay Place. Um, so a little bit of a plot synopsis about Grace is Gone. Stan Phillips' wife, Grace, is a sergeant with the U.S. Army. While she's posted in Iraq, the Ernest stay in his home in Minnesota with their daughters, Heidi, 12, and Dawn, 8. He manages a home supply store. After morning visitors bring Stan news, he takes the girls for a car ride that turns into a spontaneous trip to Dawn's favorite place, a Florida amusement park. On the way, they stop at Stan's mother's house where his brother is staying. Heidi is an insomniac who tries to fathom her father's uncharacteristic behavior. Don is cheerfully unreflective. They have fun at the park, and Stan summons his courage. Um, this is directed and written by Jim Strauss. This is the first film for which Clint Eastwood composed the score without directing as well. This film was originally going to be directed by none other than Rob Reiner, who dropped out during pre production for unknown reasons. The film's writer, Jim Strauss, then took over directorial duties. I'm wondering how it would have turned out if Rob Reiner had directed it. I think probably one of the things that kept me from initially watching this is because of the subject matter. Um, but you never know; it may turn out more positive than you're thinking it would. So I see myself seeking it out because I consider this one where John Cusack plays more of a family man type of role, and I like to see him in that from time to time. 1980s Batamax, she said, I'm half Irish. I'm going to be celebrating Friday on St. Patrick's Day. Well, you should come to the watch along I'm going to have for Leprechaun on Saturday. 1980s Batamax. Uh, Text you say, yes, I've seen it. It's good. Blissful, you say, I think I've watched this one. Texas says, I've never heard of this one. So moving right along is a horror movie based on a Stephen King story, 1408. And I remember liking this one really well. Um, John Cusack plays Mike Enslin. Samuel L. Jackson's also in this. Tony Shalhoub. Let's see. That's all the big names I'm familiar with. So, give you a little plot synopsis on 1408. I really need to go back and revisit this one because I remember watching it when it came out in '07, but I'd really like to rewatch it. So, the cynical and skeptical writer Mike Henslin writes books evaluating supernatural phenomenon in hotels, graveyards, and other haunted places, usually debunking the mystery. While writing his latest book, he travels from Los Angeles to New York to spend one night in the Dolphin Hotel's possessed room 1408, which is permanently unavailable for guests. The reluctant manager, Mr. Gerald Owen, objects to his request and offers an upgrade, expensive booze, and finally relates the death of more than 50 guests over decades in the cursed room. However, Mike threatens Mr. Owen, promising to sue the hotel, and is finally allowed to check into the room. Later in the night, he finds that guests of room 1408, once they have checked in, might never leave the room alive. So in the movie, Mike Henslin, John Cusack's character, says to his recorder, "Hotel rooms are just naturally creepy places, don't you think? I mean, how many people have slept in that bed before you? How many of them were sick? How many were losing their minds?" Stephen King wrote this in his explanatory note of 1408 in his compilation book of short stories. See, and do we really think about that? That's an interesting quote. Does anybody ever really think about those things when they stay in a hotel room? Do you think about how many people have slept in that bed before you? How many of them could have been sick? How many of them could have been losing their minds, and on and on and on? So while addressing his audience at the book signing, Mike says, "Stay scared." This is a phrase traditionally used by director George A. Romero, a friend of Stephen King's. Romero has said this at numerous conventions and often uses it as part of his signature. The story on which this film was based was almost never written. Stephen King originally created the first few pages of 1408 for his nonfiction book On Writing, which is an excellent book, by the way, as an example of how to revise a first draft. The story, however, intrigued him, and he wound up not only finishing a complete draft, but he adapted it for an audiobook compilation of short stories. At one point in the movie, Mike wears a hat that says "Paranoia is total awareness." This is a nod to one of Stephen King's favorite quotes: "Perfect paranoia is perfect awareness." One of the first victims of the room was named Grady. Grady was a character in The Shining, another horror story about a hotel written by Stephen King. In its standard edition, the DVD runtime is exactly 104 minutes and 8 seconds, referring directly to the movie's title. This is interesting. This also makes the DVD stop playing at precisely 1 hour, 44 minutes, and 8 seconds, again referring to the title. Due to alleged paranormal activity, the Emily Morgan Hotel in San Antonio, Texas, has sealed one of their rooms, 1408. In the short Stephen King story, 1408, upon which the film was based, Katie Insland is not a prominent figure, nor is her death discussed in detail. Instead, the book mentions Mike being a chronic chain smoker who had a brother who died of lung cancer. In the screenplay, Katie's name was originally to be Gracie, but this was later changed in the film. Katie is implied to have terminal cancer. However, her illness is never explicitly stated. John Cusack's second appearance in a Stephen King film adaptation. The first was Stand By Me. Keanu Reeves was attached for playing the lead role in this movie. I wonder what what you guys think about that. Are you glad that John Cusack got the role, or what would you have thought of about Keanu Reeves being in the role? Insulin, while looking at the book of the murders, unknowingly circles the 14th floor and ends up back at the elevator he got off. The classical music that is playing in the elevator was featured in the beginning of Father's Day, the first segment, which was part of the anthology collection Creepshow. The screenplay for that film was written by Stephen King, and the segment after Father's Day featured as the lead none other than Stephen King himself. The scene in which Mike climbs across the ledge as a means of escape could be a reference to another of Stephen King's short stories, The Ledge, from 1978, in which a man must circumnavigate a high ledge in order to win a bet. Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack appeared in another Stephen King adaptation, Cell, from 2016, which I don't think was nearly as good as this one. Max von Sydow was offered a cameo role. 1408 is the first Stephen King film adaptation with scenes shot in New York City to not include footage of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Instead, a scenic shot of the skyline without the towers is featured when Mike is on the phone with his publisher and his lawyer. So, I want to read this one too. The axe the fireman uses to break down the hotel door at the end of the movie is the same axe that Jack Nicholson used in The Shining. Both movies were also shot at the same studio, Elstree, in London. So that's interesting. I did not know that. So I would highly recommend 1408, and I do want to go back and revisit this one soon. Leslie, you say I love this one. Texas, you say 1408 is a favorite. It's in our collection. And Bliss, are you saying you're very glad about John Cusack being in the role, not Keanu Reeves? I mean, Keanu Reeves is a good actor, but I just think that John Cusack was better in this. Which brings us to 2007's Martian Child, which I have never heard of and subsequently never watched. John Cusack plays a character named David in this one. So Amanda Peet's also in this. Joan Cusack again. Oliver Platt. And Howard Hessman. A little bit of a plot synopsis on this. What's the nature of being a parent and of being a child? David is a widower, grieving for 2 years. He writes science fiction and was considered weird as a boy. He meets Dennis, a foster child who claims to be on a mission from Mars, stays in a large box all day, fears sunlight, and wears a belt of flashlight batteries so he won't float away. David takes the 6-year-old home on a trial. His sister and his wife's best friend offer support, but the guys are basically alone to figure this out. Dennis takes things, is expelled, and is coached by David in being normal. Will the court approve the adoption, and will Dennis stay? Can a man become a father and a child become a son? Now, this really sounds like something that would be right up my alley. And I don't know how this one slipped under my radar, because it sounds like I said, something to be right up my alley. John Cusack will once again team with Amanda Peet and Oliver Platt in the disaster movie 2012 in 2009. The name of Joan Cusack's character, Liz, is the same one as of her character in High Fidelity, which also features her brother John Cusack in the lead role. Second film released in 2007 where John Cusack portrays a widower, first one being Grace Is Gone. But technically, isn't he a widower in 1408? So that might be a little bit wrong. John Cusack and Bobby Coleman were both in Must Love Dogs, although they didn't have any scenes together. As they have done several times in their careers, real-life siblings John Cusack and Joan Cusack portray siblings in this movie. Angelica Houston and John Cusack reunite together 19 years after appearing in The Grifters, in which they play mother and son in a scandalous, incestuous romantic relationship. The full name of John Cusack's character is David Gordon. This is the same surname as his character in High Fidelity, Rob Gordon. One of the key themes in this film is the search for identity. John Cusack and Amanda Peet both starred in Identity in 2003. That's what you say, it wouldn't have been as intense with Keanu Reeves. I agree with that. You say you love this movie as well. Texas, you say, I remember Martian Child, but never saw it. Blissful says it's really good. Yeah, I agree. It does look good, Texas. So let's see. Moving right along. To a movie called Summerhood in 2008, where John Cusack was a narrator, but he is uncredited. This is another one I haven't heard of. This is supposed to be a summer camp comedy about the horrors of being 10. Let's see if there's any familiar names, really. Not really. To me, anyway. But this is a coming of age summer camp saga of four best friends who hate each other. Which I'm a little bit intrigued about this, even though you're not going to actually see John Cusack in a role where you can see him, acting, but you will get to evidently hear his voice. So I don't know how many of you have seen that one. You say Texas, no idea about this one, but the trailer looks hilarious. That's what you say. I've never heard of this one. Which moves us to War Inc. from 2008, which is another one I have not seen or heard of. John Cusack plays a character named Hauser in this one. So, Marissa Tomei is also in this. Hilary Duff, John Cusack again, Dan Aykroyd, Montel Williams, Ben Kingsley. And let's see. A little bit of plot synopsis. A political satire set in Turkestan, a country occupied by an American private corporation run by a former U.S. vice president. In an effort to monopolize the opportunities the war-torn nation offers, the corporation's CEO hires a troubled hitman to kill a Middle East oil minister. Now struggling with his own growing demons, the assassin must pose as the corporation's trade show producer, in order to pull off his latest hit while maintaining his cover by organizing the high-profile wedding of Yannicka Babiya, an outrageous Middle Eastern pop star, and keeping a sexy left-wing reporter in check. This is listed as an action comedy thriller. The cast considered this movie to be an unofficial sequel to Grosse Pointe Blank. 5 actors appeared in both films. John Cusack, Joan Cusack, Bill Cusack, Dan Aykroyd, and Doug Durst. I don't know. I mean, the movie might be better than it actually sounds, and I would be willing to give it a try, but it's not going to be at the top of my list of ones to literally go out and or seek out and find. But Tazy said, I like this one a lot. It's done really well. Blissful says, I've never heard of this one. So it's on Peacock, Texas? Okay, may have to check that out. Which brings us to another animated film from 2008, Igor, where John Cusack does the voice of Igor in this one. This looks cute. I have, honestly, I have not seen it though. Molly Shannon, Steve Buscemi, John Cleese, Eddie Izzard, Jay Leno, all do voices in the film. So, basic plot synopsis for this: in a world filled with mad scientists and evil intentions, one talented evil scientist, hunchback lab assistant, has big dreams of becoming a mad scientist himself and winning the annual Evil Science Fair. This is listed as animation, comedy, family, fantasy, horror, and sci-fi. And it is rated PG for some thematic elements, scary images, action, and mild language. But I definitely would like to seek this one out. It does look cute. Which brings us to 2009's 2012, where John Cusack plays a character named Jackson Curtis. This is one that I've heard of, and I know basically what it's about, but have never actually watched it. So again, Amanda Pete's on this, Oliver Platt's on it, Danny Glover, Woody Harrelson, John Billingsley. Basic plot synopsis: Dr. Adrian Helmsley, part of a worldwide geophysical team investigating the effect on the Earth of radiation from unprecedented solar storms, learns that the Earth's core is heating up. He warns U.S. President Thomas Wilson that the crust of the Earth is becoming unstable and that without proper preparations for saving a fraction of the world's population, entire race is doomed. Meanwhile, writer Jackson Curtis stumbles on the same information. While the world's leaders race to build arks to escape the impending cataclysm, Curtis struggles to find a way to save his family. Meanwhile, volcanic eruptions and earthquakes of unprecedented strength wreak havoc around the world. Now, I have to pick my times when I watch films like this, disaster films, apocalyptic types of films. It just, if I pick the wrong time to watch them, it can really take its toll on me. And so that's probably a reason why I have not actually sat down and watched this one, because I'm finding a time when I'm really, really super happy before I watch something like that. Texas, you say I've never watched this one. Blissful, you say I haven't either. And you also say same here. So moving right along is a movie that I really enjoyed from 2010, and I need to go back and rewatch it. Is Hot Tub Time Machine, and John Cusack plays the character of Adam. I just thought this movie was funny. A little bit dirty minded, but still funny. So, who else is in this? Crispin Glover's in this. Chevy Chase, Charlie McDermott. And this was directed by Steve Pink. Little bit of a plot synopsis for you. Three friends on losing streaks. Adam, whose girlfriend dumped him. Nick with a dead-end job and a cheating wife. And Lou, a suicidal alcoholic. To help Lou recover from car exhaust poisoning, Adam and Nick, with Adam's nephew Jacob, go to a winter resort that was their old party place. It's now a dump, but the lads rally for a night of drinking in the hot tub. Somehow, the hot tub takes them back to 1986 on a fateful night for each of them. Maybe if they do everything the same way they did that night, they'll get back to the future so Jacob can be born. There are serious temptations to do things differently. Will they make it back to their sorry lives? And what about Jacob? In an interview, John Cusack stated that he made his decision to join the cast of this film almost entirely based off of the title. When they're on the mountain, a guy skis past talking on a mobile phone and says, "I want my $2," a reference to the deranged bike riding paperboy in Better Off Dead, also starring John Cusack. When the guys first realize they're in the 80s and images are flashing up on the television, there's one shot of Chevy Chase from his appearance in a Paul Simon music video, You Can Call Me Al, from 1986, which is the year the film is set. Chase plays the repairman in this film. During the closing credits, the last entry under the cast says, "And introducing William Zabka." This is a production joke. Introducing credits are usually reserved for actors in their first ever screen role, or at least their first prominent role early in a career. But Zabka has been acting since the early 1980s. The same joke was used during the credits at the end of Ocean's 11 for Julia Roberts. Crispin Glover was asked to scream by the director when the accident happens, but he felt his character would be in such shock that he stayed silent, eventually convincing Steve Pink that this was the right call. One of the clips shown on the television inside the ski lodge is a sketch from Saturday Night Live, Betty Thomas and Stray Cats, featuring Eddie Murphy. The classic skit has Murphy looking, singing, and acting just like the legendary James Brown getting into his hot tub. The band Poison was portrayed in the film by a Poison tribute band from Phoenix, Arizona that went by the name of Unskinny Bob. After arriving in the past, John Cusack pulls a Fishbone t-shirt from his suitcase. Cusack is a well-known fan of the band, and there have been references to them in several of his other films. Screenwriters Sean Anders and John Morris were originally slated to direct until they were replaced by Steve Pink, a personal friend of John Cusack. When the group first meets Blaine, Sebastian Stan, Jacob, Clark Duke says, "Hey, look, it's the douchebag from Karate Kid 3. Rick, who was betting against Lou in the bar, was played by William Zabka, who was the rival of Ralph Macchio in The Karate Kid. This was United Artists' last film to be distributed by MGM. Crispin Glover, who plays the bellhop at the hotel, also starred as George McFly in Back to the Future, another time-traveling film that takes place partially in the mid-1980s. So we have some other trivia, but I'm not going to read every bit of trivia there. There's a lot of, 1980s references, of course. In case you're interested in the alternate unrated version, it is longer by about a minute and 40 seconds. Um, so again, Hot Tub Time Machine is definitely one I want to go back and revisit here in the near future. Which brings us to the next film in 2010, Shanghai, in which John Cusack plays Paul Soames. Um, Chow Yun Fat is also on this. David Morse, Ken Watanabe, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. That's about it for people that I know. Storyline on, or the plot synopsis on this: an American man returns to a corrupt Japanese occupied Shanghai 4 months before Pearl Harbor and discovers his friend has been killed. While he unravels the mysteries of the death, he falls in love and discovers a much larger secret. So, this one is probably going to seem a little, middle of the road for me. I could see more like Steve watching this movie. But I would want to check it out at some point. Because Stephen King, because John Cusack's in it. Here is a movie next I'm going to talk about from 2012 that I recently rewatched, and that's The Raven. And John Cusack plays none other than Edgar Allan Poe in this movie. So let's see. If there's any other familiar names for me in here. Michael Shannon again. So a little plot synopsis on the Raven. This movie is set in the mid 1800s and involves poet Edgar Allan Poe. A serial killer is on the loose and murdering people using Poe's descriptions from his published stories and poems. Poe teams up with Detective Fields, a Baltimore policeman, to try and catch a killer by using his knowledge of the descriptions. Even though the stories are fictional, they start to become reality, and the killer is a step ahead of them. Then it takes on a personal note as Poe's lover becomes a target. Will they stop the killer in time? You know what? I really enjoyed this much better the second time around than the first time I watched it. I don't really know why I didn't like it as well the first time I watched it when it came out. But just rewatching, I was like, yeah, this is a pretty decent story and a kind of a twist and a mashup on the whole Edgar Allan Poe thing. And I think John Cusack does a really great job of playing Edgar Allan Poe in this. Texas, you say you're not a fan of disaster films that much either. Bliss, what you said, my mom loves watching documentaries on natural disasters, drives me crazy. Texas, yeah, such a funny film. I wish he would have been in the second one. I do too. Bliss, what you say you didn't see either. Blizzard said, well, one for the record, I just had to get the dog out of the refrigerator. Oh my goodness. Texas, you say you want to see this one? Wow, your dog is a daredevil, Blissful. You say he opened the door and jumped in. Blissful, you say I absolutely love that movie. Texas, you say that's a good one. Um, moving along is The Paperboy from 2012, which is another one that I've heard about, but never really watched or not watched all of it. John Cusack plays the character Hilary Van Wetter in this movie. Um, and this has quite a few big names in it. Matthew McConaughey, Nicole Kidman, of course, John Cusack, uh, Zac Efron, I guess if you consider him a big name, Scott Glenn. Uh, but let's see. This one, a little bit of a plot synopsis on this one. Eldest son Ward Jansen is a star reporter for a Miami newspaper. Has returned home with close friend Yardley to investigate a racial murder case. Younger brother Jack Jensen has returned home after a failed stint at a university as a star swimmer. To help give his life some direction, Ward gives Jack a job on their investigation as their driver. But into the mix comes the fiancée of the imprisoned convict who stirs up confused feelings of love and lust for the young Jack. Meanwhile, Ward and Yardley's investigation stirs up deep rooted issues of race and acceptance, which could cause serious consequences for everyone involved. This one, reading a little more about it, really piques my interest about this one. Um, so I could definitely see myself looking into this one at some point in the near future. So let's see. Moving right along, and guys, I hope you don't think I'm going through these too quickly. I just want to I didn't want to push this one into a third night. Another one from 2012 is The Factory, which I have neither seen nor heard of, but John Cusack plays the character of Mike in this movie, and he he plays or stars with Jennifer Carpenter. For you Jennifer Carpenter fans, let's see if there's anybody else. Not really. Okay, so plot synopsis for this one. Detective Mike Fletcher, a rugged and obsessive police officer, and his partner Kelsey Walker are on the trail of a serial killer who prowls the streets targeting young streetwalkers. When his teenage daughter disappears, Fletcher discovers that the killer has kidnapped her after mistaking her for a prostitute. Fletcher's obsession goes into overdrive when he drops all professional restraint to get the killer and save his daughter. Now, just reading about this does make me intrigued about it. And I definitely can see myself seeking this one out as well. Has anybody in the chat um seen this one? The Factory. Texas, you said The Factory is so great, but it's got a really shocking, fucked up twist. Well, that kind of reminds me of Looking for Mr. Goodbar. I never watched that in its heyday, of course, but it took me years. I mean, Steve and I just saw that. Well, he may have seen it before, but I watched it probably in the last year or so with Steve, and I, talk about shocking, fucked up twists at the end of a movie. So, um, I'm kind of intrigued that you said that too, Texas. Um, but we'll move along to the next movie from 2013. We Are Not Animals. Another one which I haven't heard of and I have not seen, of course. John Cusack plays a character named Tony Lovecraft. So John Cusack was a writer on this as well as being a star in it. Um, so let's see if anybody else that is familiar to me was in this. Not really. Just John Cusack. Um, So, plot synopsis for this, it's very short and sweet and to the point. A Hollywood actor grows tired of making the same corporate movies, so he moves to Argentina to find more experimental and meaningful work. This film is loosely based on John Cusack's take on Hollywood creativity, according to interviews and Looper. So I'm kind of intrigued by what this one is actually about, and the fact, of course, that John Cusack stars in it. I'm not sure when I'll get around to it, but I would like to see it. Texas said never seen or heard of this one, and Blissful says me either. Which brings us to 2013's The Frozen Ground, another one I've not seen or heard of. John Cusack plays a character by the name of Robert Hansen. Nicolas Cage is also in this movie, starring alongside John Cusack. Again, I'm looking for familiar names in here. Jodie Lynn O'Keefe, I do know that name, and 50 Cent is also in this. Little bit of a plot synopsis. Alaska trooper Jack Halcombe believes Robert Hansen is a serial killer who abducts young girls, tortures and sexually assaults them, then kills them. However, he doesn't have enough evidence to get a search warrant for Hansen's premises. He knows that one victim, Cindy Paulson, somehow survived, so he decides to seek her help. But he finds that she's now a junkie with trust issues. Holcomb has to earn her trust. Meanwhile, Hansen is still hunting and killing girls. So I may be quite disturbed by watching John Cusack play a killer of young girls in this movie, but yet it also sounds intriguing, as I like a lot of different kind of crime movies. This is supposed to be based on actual events as well. So here's something interesting. John Cusack was bored of getting offered roles in romantic comedies that didn't fit him. So he accepted roles as a serial killer in two movies back to back, The Paperboy and this film. So he was also a serial killer in Paperboy. In this movie, Nicolas Cage plays the law enforcement officer and John Cusack plays the convict. In Con Air, the roles were reversed. Cusack was a law enforcement officer. Based on real life serial killer Robert Hansen, aka the Butcher Baker, Hansen admitted to killing 17 women, but a map found during a search of his home had 24 X's with bodies found near the majority of the marked locations. Law enforcement officers believe he has killed as many as 30 women. And Vanessa Hudgens' pole dance scene was slightly edited in the final cut. And a little bit more information about Robert Hansen. He died August 21st, 2014 at Alaska Regional Hospital in Anchorage. He was 75. During the making of this movie, he was still alive. Texas, you say I've seen this one. It's okay. Blissful says I agree. Texas. Blissful, you say I've watched documentaries on that guy. Um, which brings us To the next film, also from 2013, The Numbers Station. John Cusack plays the character Emerson Kent. Again, it looks like he's starring in the film. Um, let's see if there's any. Richard Brake's in this. Joe Montana. Little bit of a plot synopsis. I've never seen nor heard of this one either. When the moral values of a longtime wet work black ops agent is tested during his last operation, he receives an unfavorable psych evaluation. Now he's given a break in a seemingly uncomplicated assignment of simply protecting the security of a young female code announcer, code resources, and remote station they were assigned to. After an ambush and one phone call later, it becomes a complicated fight for their survival. This one sounds intriguing to me as well. Um, not quite as intriguing as some of the others that I mentioned tonight, but I would definitely be willing to give this one a try. Again, very shocked at the amount of John Cusack movies that I have not seen. So this brings us to another film from 2013. Again, John Cusack did a lot of films in 2013. This one is The Butler. And John Cusack plays Richard Nixon in this. So a little bit of plot synopsis on this one. Well, let me talk about some of the other actors. Forrest Whitaker, Oprah Winfrey, Jane Fonda, Mariah Carey, Vanessa Redgrave. A little bit of a plot synopsis. Cecil Gaines was a sharecropper's son who grew up in the 1920s as a domestic servant for the white family who casually destroyed his. Eventually striking out on his own, Cecil becomes a hotel valet of such efficiency and discreetness in the 1950s that he becomes a butler in the White House itself. There, Cecil would serve numerous U.S. presidents over the decades as a passive witness of history, with the American Civil Rights Movement gaining momentum, even as his family has troubles of its own, as his wife Gloria struggles with her addictions, and his defiant eldest son Louis strives for a just world. Cecil must decide whether he should take action in his own way. The character of Cecil Gaines was based on Eugene Allen, who served as White House butler for over 30 years and 8 presidents. Harry S. Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan. Much of the detail is fictionalized for this movie. This reunites Robin Williams and Forrest Whitaker after 26 years. Their first appearance together was in Good Morning Vietnam. This is Laura Ziskin's final film. She died of breast cancer on June 12, 2011, before it was completed. Robin Williams plays President Dwight D. Eisenhower in The Night at the Museum fantasy movies. He played a magically brought to life wax statue of President Theodore Roosevelt. In A Man of the Year, he played a fictionalized president. This is Oprah Winfrey's first on-screen film role since Beloved in 1998, in which she does not play herself. Matthew McConaughey was cast as John F. Kennedy, but dropped out due to scheduling conflicts. James Franco was considered to replace him. Mila Kunis was considered to play Jacqueline Kennedy. Liam Neeson was considered to play Lyndon B. Johnson. And the original cast also included Nicole Kidman, Hugh Jackman, and Zac Efron in unspecified roles. So, has anybody seen that one? Texas says, I might have seen this one, but don't really remember. Blissful says, I haven't seen this one either. Texas said, I'd definitely like to see this one. Huge fan of Forrest Whitaker. Yeah, me too. I love Forrest Whitaker. Guys, I am going to step away for just 1 second. We've got a few more movies to cover. I'm going to try to make sure I get through them all. But I'm going to grab me a snack real quick and run to the restroom. And I will be right back. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Steve, was that you on the camera? Scared the crap out of me. It was. Y'all may have heard me talking back there. I don't know. My mic picks up a lot better than I realize sometimes. But I think Steve was talking through one of our security cameras we've got at the house, and it scared the shit out of me. Just hear this disembodied voice coming out of nowhere, basically. Got my sandwich too hot here. Okay. Well, guys, I said I didn't really want to make this a three-parter, but my God, there are a lot of movies here. And I've already went on for over 3 hours. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover a few more, and then this massive John Cusack filmography will be a three-parter. Wow. Just amazing output that this guy has had. So what I will probably do is finish this up on Thursday night, because tomorrow night, of course, me and TJ are planning on doing the Tales from the Dark Side stream. So I don't want to intrude upon that. Excuse me. So Bliss, will you say Texas, is that one streaming anywhere? Texas says we can watch it. It's on several streaming sites we have. Blissful says, be right back. I have to tuck a grumpy puppy in bed. I know how that is. So let's move along to the next film, which is Grand Piano, also from 2013. John Cusack plays a character named Clem, another one that I've never seen nor heard of. But it does star Elijah Wood alongside John Cusack. And Alex Winter is also in this. Dee Wallace, Jumpin' Jack Taylor, as Steve likes to refer to him. That's about all the familiar names I see just offhand. So again, this is a short and sweet and to the point plot synopsis. A pianist with stage fright endures a performance under the eyes of a mysterious sniper who will shoot and kill him if the wrong note is played. For some odd reason, this sounds like it could have been an Argento movie. I mean, if it had been an Argento movie, there probably would have been a lot more elaborate kills and slashings. So, again, this sounds intriguing to me. And I would like to see it eventually. I don't know. Is there anybody in the chat that has seen this? Rooster, you say good, Dana, keep it up. Texas, you say never seen this, but I'd check it out. Yeah, that's me too. I'm curious about it. I'm curious about it enough to take a look into it. Which brings us to the next film of 2013 for John Cusack, Adult World, in which he plays a character named Rat Billings. Now, it seems like I've heard of this movie before, but I definitely have never watched it. I don't think. So, Emma Roberts, John Cusack, Cloris Leachman, that's about all the familiar names I see. Again, this is a very short and sweet and to the point plot line or plot synopsis. A naive college graduate, Amy, who believes she's destined to be a great poet, begrudgingly accepts a job in a shop while she pursues a mentorship with reclusive writer Rat Billings, and that is John Cusack's character. So yeah, this sounds like a type of movie that I would definitely be interested in. With a title like Adult World, it almost sounds like, and it looks like it might turn into a porno or something, but obviously that is not what the movie is about. So I'm intrigued by that one as well. Yeah, Kelly, it continues to blow my mind. I'm just keep seeing more and more and more movies that John Cusack has been in. Texas, I'd like to see this. Two of American Horror Stories cast in it. Yeah, there you go. Which brings us to another movie. No, actually, that was a TV series, which I'm not going to cover that. But if you're interested in it, the TV series is Doll and M. He plays a character named John. Which brings us to 2014's The Bag Man, in which John Cusack plays the character of Jack. This also has Crispin Glover, Robert De Niro, Sticky Fingers. And that's about it for names. Plot synopsis on this one. A professional shooter gets a new job from his boss. The job is simple, to bring him a bag without opening it. But everyone on this town wants that bag. So Jack has to protect the bag and try to carry out his mission. In this city, he will meet a lot of people, and he will be seduced by a mysterious woman. So this one again, I am intrigued by it. Not heard of it, never seen it. But just looking at the poster for it and reading that little bit of a plot synopsis for it makes it sound interesting enough for me to try to seek it out. It only got a 5.2 on IMDb, but to me, really, that doesn't mean anything. I like to make my own decisions about these different movies. Which brings us to another film in 2014. Again, John Cusack did a lot of films in 2014. This is Maps to the Stars. He plays Dr. Stafford Weiss in this one. This looks interesting. Let's see here. Julianne Moore's in this. Robert Pattinson. Let's see. Yep. Other than well, believe it or not, I have not seen this. This is a David Cronenberg movie that I have not seen. I'm definitely going to have to seek this one out. Because, again, I don't know how this one slipped under my radar. Not only does it have John Cusack in it, but it's directed by David Cronenberg. So, plot synopsis for this one. The Weiss family is the archetypical Hollywood dynasty. Father Stafford is an analyst and coach who has made a fortune with the self-help manuals. Mother Christina mostly looks after the career of their son, Benji, 13, a child star. One of Stafford's clients, Havana, is an actress who dreams of shooting a remake of the movie that made her mother, Clarissa, star in the 60s. Clarissa is dead now, and visions of her come to haunt Havana at night. Adding to the toxic mix, Benji has just come off a rehab program he joined when he was 9, and his sister, Agatha, has recently been released from a sanatorium where she was treated for criminal pyromania and befriended a limo driver, Jerome, who is also an aspiring actor. So, of course, it doesn't appear that John Cusack is like, well, I guess he is top billed. I mean, he's playing Dr. Stafford Weiss, so I guess that means that he's pretty well up there on the list. I definitely want to see this one. Again, I don't know how a David Cronenberg movie and a David Cronenberg movie with John Cusack in it, how it slipped past my radar. How on earth did it slip by Dana's, John Cusack and David Cronenberg radars is just beyond me. So has anybody seen that one? Texie said that one is okay, not great. I need to see this one as well. Blisswell, you said, okay, he's all tucked in. Kelly said, that's your unicorn, Dana. So moving right along, we're going to try to go through a few more of these. Is Drive Hard from 2014. This one I think I've heard of, but I have not seen it. John Cusack plays a character named Simon Keller in this one. So Thomas Jane is in this. And that's about it that I'm seeing that I know of. Another kind of short plot synopsis. Former race car driver turned driver's training instructor, Jane is abducted by a mysterious thief played by Cusack and forced to be the wheelman for a crime that puts both in the sights of the cops and the mob and leads them all on a chase across Australia's Gold Coast. Again, this one sounds intriguing to me. I want to give this one a try. This one is directed by Brian Trenchard Smith. So yeah, I'll be seeking that one out at some point as well. Which brings us to another 2014 entry, The Prince, in which John Cusack plays the character of Sam. This is another one I have not seen or heard of. And Lord, I don't know why, because not only is John Cusack in it, but also Bruce Willis and Jason Patrick in an action thriller. $50 Cent is also in this one. Don Harvey. So, what's the plot synopsis for this one? A mechanic learns that his daughter, whom he thinks is at college, has dropped out. He tries to call her, but when someone else answers the phone, he goes to where she's staying and finds a photo of his daughter with another girl. So he looks for her and asks her where his daughter is. She says that his daughter hooked up with a guy from New Orleans, so they go there to find him. When some men refuse to answer his questions, they beat him, but he fights back, which amazes the girl. Eventually, they find the guy who tells them where his daughter might be. On their way, some men shoot at them. This is kind of a threadbare plot synopsis, but okay. He learns that they work for a man named Omar who wants him. He still tries to find his daughter while Omar sends his best man to get him. This was the third film that 50 Cent and Bruce Willis have starred in together, the other two being Set Up and Fire with Fire. Although this one doesn't sound quite as interesting as some of these others I've been talking about tonight, I still think I would like to see it. This one only got a 4.6 on IMDb. But again, as I said before, I don't generally go by that. So I'm going to cover one more and then I'm going to call it a night. And then Thursday night, I will cover the remainder of these movies on up until 2022. So the last one I'm going to cover tonight is one also from 2014 called Love and Mercy. And he plays, John Cusack plays Brian Future. This one looks intriguing. I did not realize that this was who this was about. I'm definitely going to look into this one. So let's see. Who else is in this? Paul Giamatti is in this. Anybody else that I know? So plot synopsis for this. I'm betting Texas has seen this one. Brian Wilson is the creative soul of the Beach Boys, but he paid a heavy price for his talent. That especially shows during his peak artistic years in the 1960s, as his inner demons and obsessions trying to please his abusive father drive him to a mental breakdown that would plague him for years. In the 1980s, with Brian barely functional under the domination of the unscrupulous Dr. Landy, Brian meets and falls in love with Melinda Ledbetter. As the relationship grows, she observes Brian's crippling subservience to the abusive psychotherapist with growing alarm. She must ultimately take action with a love willing to stand up to oppression she cannot ignore. Let's give a little trivia for this one. I'm definitely going to watch this one. The real Wilson reported having a mild dissociative experience while watching the film. He started to believe that Paul Giamatti was the actual Eugene Landy and felt absolutely in fear for several minutes. The Beatles song referenced by Wilson's brothers was John Lennon's Girl from the album Rubber Soul. It was one example where the Beatles began displaying prominent Beach Boys influence in their music, taking inspiration from the cohesiveness of Rubber Soul. Brian then set out to make Pet Sounds, an album with no filler tracks. The Beatles then responded to Pet Sounds with Revolver, and more famously, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, after Brian failed to complete Smile. During the Q&A at the film's premiere at SXSW 15, Brian Wilson stated that his favorite scene in the movie was the intimate scene between Cusack and Banks, reflecting a happy moment between his real-life wife and himself. A third era which focused on Brian Wilson's infamous bed period in the 1970s, was considered but ultimately discarded, leaving some of his most troubled years to the viewer's imagination. When asked who would have filled the third Wilson role, Paul had responded that he had considered Philip Seymour Hoffman. Paul Dano and John Cusack were Bill Pollard's first choices to play Brian Wilson, responding to some criticism over Cusack's physical resemblance to Wilson. Pollard said that Cusack looked like Wilson during a very particular era, specifically when Wilson appeared in the documentary Brian Wilson, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times in 1995. Paul Dano and John Cusack did not interact with each other during filming. This was encouraged by Bill Pollard, who didn't want the actors to simply perform an impression of Wilson, but to create their own organic understanding of the characters. The film implies that Wilson resigned from touring just as the Beatles' Rubber Soul was released in December 1965. In real life, Wilson gave up touring in January 1965, almost an entire year before Rubber Soul. And he went on to record 2 more completed albums for the Beach Boys before embarking on the Pet Sounds project. Bill Pollard said that the real footage of Brian Wilson was included in the film to prove to doubting audiences that Wilson really does act the way he is played by John Cusack and Paul Dano. So, I could go on and on about that, but I won't. So I'm going to read the rest of these. And chats, Texas, you say that one looks okay. Texas, you say, I can imagine from the day he had today. Oh, talking about the dog. Texas, you say, this one sounds really bad. Blissful, you said, my very favorite. Texas said, Blissful, and I love this movie. Blissful, you say, John did an amazing job playing Brian. Texas, you say, I think he and Paul Dano both did. And Blissful does agree with that. So I'm definitely going to be watching that one sooner rather than later, because that time period, anything to do with the Beach Boys or the Beatles or just that time period, like I said, in general. And I love the fact that John Cusack is playing Brian Wilson at some point in his life. So that completes the second part for the love of John Cusack. Again, I should be finishing it up on Thursday, barring anything going on with me medical wise or anything. I love it that the same core group of people is pretty much sticking with me throughout all of these. I honestly did not intend for this to be a 3-parter. I did not envision it to be a 3-parter. I could have very well broken it up even more, but I didn't. I went almost on for almost 3.5 hours tonight. But again, I want to thank all of you guys for joining me in the chat and sharing your reminiscences of these movies that you have seen and us discussing the ones that we haven't. And, this is, honestly, this is one of the big, and I've said it before, this is one of the big reasons why I do these types of streams, where I do a breakdown of like certain actors or certain directors' careers. Because not only does it introduce me to movies that I may, have missed along the way, but it also does the same for the people that are watching these. And we have a lot of fun going back and forth and discussing them. And that's just what it's all about for me. And even if I've had a rough day or anything, I didn't have too rough of a day today at work. But if I have had a rough day, work wise or otherwise, personal wise or whatever, um, these things always make me feel better. Because I'm in here with like minded people discussing movies, which we all love. And I don't always have to stick to horror. I do a lot, but then I like to switch it up every once in a while. I was even telling Steve because he said, "What are you going to do when you run out of movies to do watch alongs for?" I'm like, that'll never happen because I don't have to stay with horror movies. We could switch it up and do comedies or anything, sci fi, whatever. Um, Bliss, what you say? I love the Beach Boys. They were my very first concert. That is awesome. Um, so, with all that being said, guys, and please, feel free to share with your friends and maybe your family members if they're interested in this stuff about the watch along on Saturday for Leprechaun at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And join me and TJ tomorrow night, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, to do the first half of season 3 of Tales from the Dark Side. We're going to do another episode breakdown. And with all that being said, thank you, Bliss. Will you say another great live? Thank you, Dana. Well, you're very welcome. And thank you guys for coming by. And with all that being said, I am going to skedaddle on out of here for the night. And I will see everyone on the flip side. Y'all have a good night now.